What's going on, gang, and welcome back to Scared of Normal. I'm Mike Murfitt, joined by my co-host Chase Willie, and today we're stoked to welcome the multifaceted cyclist and all-around good dude, Jimmy Smith, to the show. Welcome, man.
Yeah, thanks, dude. Stoked to be doing this.
Yeah, we've been talking about this one for a little bit, kind of been like hit and missing on schedules, but yeah, we're finally making it happen.
Yeah, we're here, man. Let's do it.
Yeah, we've got some really good stories to tell. Like, we've known each other. As I was putting this one together, I realized that we've known each other more than half my life at this point, which is bizarre.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, insane. So I'm really excited to talk about your journey so far. It's been like an insane pleasure watching you realize visions and overcome hurdles over the last decade plus, and really excited to tell those stories with you today. So for the people who don't know who you are, if you just met somebody on the street, what would your elevator pitch be for who you are and what you do?
Man, first of all, yeah, Jimmy Smith, you already probably introduced me, but I race mountain bikes mainly. That's kind of the elevator pitch and gets people going ooh and ah, but definitely do a lot of other things than that for sure. Yeah, just my goal as a person really right now is just to spend as much time on a bike as possible and kind of continue pushing myself in that world.
Heck yeah, man. Do you have a favorite style of bike that you're leaning towards right now?
Man, right now, I think honestly, like the cross country bike is my favorite thing to ride.
Really? Interesting.
Which is a weird take. For me, it kind of combines what's currently like my two favorite parts of riding, and it's like those big days where you're covering a lot of ground and kind of experiencing these just the mountains here in Boulder or wherever it is, and then just ripping trail. And the XC bike for me like brings those two things together in a really fun way where I can be out all day long and kind of feel this sense of like adventure with what I'm doing, and at the same time like end up on some single track that's like absolutely ripping and really fun.
That is super cool.
Yeah. So
the best of both worlds.
Totally. Yeah, the XC bike right now is kind of got my attention, which is a weird one.
Yeah, that is not what I expected your answer to be. Because I know you kind of as an enduro guy. I guess when we've known each other kind of through Connected Worlds for a while, and when we've ridden together in the past, it's been full enduro, and you just absolutely rip on that type of bike. So
yeah, man.
So I'm and I didn't know you had a BMX background too. So I'm kind of excited to dig into that a little bit too, and talk about all styles of bike.
Yeah, totally. A lot of layers to my experience with the bicycle, but yeah, enduro has definitely kind of been the main focus on the racing front for sure.
Gotcha.
And that's kind of like takes a lot of energy to compete at a high level with that, and like the Enduro World Series now has changed a little bit, but like that was kind of my North Star for the last 5-6 years as I've gotten into this side of cycling.
Cool.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, dude. Well, yeah, that's a good like intro to who you are.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to throw it all the way back now to where did you grow up, man? Like, where did it all start for you?
Yeah. So born in SoCal, Inland Empire, center of like the kind of action sports world in a lot of ways. Lived there through like, I think of it in grades. I don't know, like age just doesn't hit for me. It's just, I think about what grade I was in.
That's fair.
And I was there through like the end of fourth grade. And from that point, I moved to the Big Island of Hawaii, where I stayed until the end of my freshman year of high school. So that was like a pretty big part of my life. And then moved from Hawaii to Springfield, Missouri. I guess the summer of my freshman year of high school, and then kind of spent high school and then into college in Springfield.
Heck yeah. That's a wild move right there from Big Island, Hawaii to Springfield, Missouri.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy thing to happen for sure. Like sophomore year of high school, my whole world just like absolutely changed. But at the time, like I was super into BMX, and that was kind of like everything I cared about. And there was a sick skate park there, a really good riding scene, and it was like the runway for me once I moved seemed so much longer in the BMX world, and that was kind of like what was dominating my experience at the time. So that definitely was like something that helped me both cope with that move and be like really excited about being somewhere else with like really just a nice skate park that I could ride pretty much every day. Yeah.
So I'm curious, like growing up Big Island, Hawaii, like when was the first time you got on the BMX bike?
Man,
or was it in California that you found the BMX bike first?
I think I never had a BMX bike when I lived in California, but my mom, like I skateboarded a lot when I was like real young, and my mom would take me to the Van skate park in like Ontario,
Okay.
And they had like this huge set of dirt jumps, and I just like, I like sucked at skate. Like I was learning how to drop in. I was a little grom, just like figuring it out, just getting in the way at the skate park. And I remember just seeing like this huge like 6-pack of dirt jumps. And that was kind of like my first exposure to it, you know? And like, I was pretty stoked on skating, but like just watching people like fly through that set of dirt jumps and how much faster they were going than the skaters. And just like, I don't know, it just was so cool to me. But then, yeah, I guess for some reason, like I really wanted a BMX race bike, and I got one of those like, I don't even know what they're called, but like I was small. I was in like middle school maybe. And
like the skinny tire.
yeah, like the skinny tire. Like for some reason I was like, I just need this kind of bike. And like at the time, like I had some friends that were into motocross in Hawaii. So I think that was kind of the inspiration. But there's
like not a BMX track there, right?
No, dude.
Okay.
I don't know. Like, but for some reason I was just like, this is the sickest kind of bike. And I ended up like getting one and was super stoked on it and rode it around a bunch. And that was kind of like my introduction to it, I guess. And we kind of lived in the middle of nowhere on the Big Island. So like I would ride, you know, like 3 or 4 miles to get to my friend's house on just like dirt roads. Like I guess what we would call gravel now. But yeah, it was just like
early gravel riding.
To me, like
BMX race bike.
Yeah, that was like, that bike to me seemed like, oh, this thing's like fast and I can like get around and I can still like jump stuff and whatnot. And then, yeah, I kind of started getting into like the freestyle thing. Like that seemed better. And I realized like, oh, I have the wrong bike for this. I think I went to a skate park with it and it just didn't work.
Did you ever actually race that bike?
I have never raced BMX, really.
Interesting.
Like, I've gone to the track years later a couple times and just like messed around because I had some friends that did it.
Yeah.
But that bike kind of led me into getting like, I ordered like a kink launch off Dan's Comp. And it showed up and I had no idea how to build it. I was brakeless from day one because that was the only thing I couldn't figure out how to like set up on the bike, you know?
Yeah, when you're a little kid,
crazy.
dude, brakes are complicated.
Yeah, I was like, what the heck is going on? Like,
complicated to me. What are you
yeah, still, dude, I'm bleeding my brakes. I'm like, what is happening right now? But yeah, I bought just like I did yard work and stuff and saved up enough money to buy this like kink launch, and I was just hyped on it. And yeah, that was on the Big Island of Hawaii in kind of the middle of nowhere. And we didn't really have that many places to like go ride, you know? So like I would ride a lot of street. There was a little skate park, you know, maybe 20 minutes away that didn't really allow bikes in.
What's
either.
that park called again?
Pahoa. Yeah, which is like this little town.
It's insane. I actually was just out there and rode it. You actually sent me a message on Instagram.
I was freaking out.
That's the first skate park I ever rode. And like, it's funny because, you know, knowing you for so long, knowing how you ride, I'm like, oh, it all makes sense.
Yeah,
like going
dude.
to that skate park and like, I got kicked out within like the first 20 minutes, but yeah, cool little spot.
Yeah, totally. So like I would go there and basically show up. I think there was a gate that they would like unlock at like 8 or 9 or something. So I would like show up in the morning and like climb the fence and ride the skate park and get kicked out by like the same security guard every time I was there. And he just didn't care. He was just like, you gotta go, dude. Like my job's basically to tell you can't ride your bike.
That's
here.
hilarious.
But it was like, it was chill. So
you just rode it like before it opened and they were fine with it until it opened. And then they were like, now we're liable for your injuries or whatever.
I'm like, I feel like the usage rights at that skate park were kind of always in flex. It's like BMX bikes were okay there. And then all of a sudden they weren't. And then there was like a fence around the park and then there wasn't. And it was just always kind of moving. But like, when I was kind of trying to get after it, it was just an open, like public, like sandstone, you know, but there's a gate there.
Yeah.
So like I would just climb that fence and hop in there.
That's
and then
so
the dude would
funny.
just kind of come and like kick me out.
It's also so bizarre to me that it was so locked down like that because it is literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm like driving around that little town. I'm like, you guys care about people riding bikes at the skate park? Like that's bizarre to me.
It's crazy. I don't know why. Like probably some kid just got broke off and they were like, yeah, this is not good look for the city or whatever it is. But for whatever reason, they've been kind of a stickler about it. That tiny skate park in the middle of nowhere.
That's so funny.
Have you been back to that skate park recently?
I actually, I forget what year it was. I feel like 2019 or something was the first time I went back to Hawaii since I had left.
Cool.
And in 2019, like that was a couple years into me doing the mountain bike thing. So I was a little rusty on the BMX bike, but kind of like put a little bit of effort into getting cozy on it again and took a trip there with a fellow like racer buddy of mine. And I actually got to go to that skate park and like a bunch of the other skate parks. I spent a lot of time on Oahu as well. My dad lived on Oahu and then my mom lived on the Big Island. So I would kind of like commute back and forth on a plane between the two, which was a really cool experience as a kid as well.
That's sick.
But yeah, I got to like revisit a ton of those skate parks and it was pretty crazy. Just like, you know, not leaving Hawaii and only riding BMX there, like that's your perspective. And like the best people there, like those are the best people, you know, and you just kind of, you don't really have a perspective on like how crazy the sport can be. And then, you know, leaving and, you know, eventually going to like Woodward and like all these kind of like peak BMX experiences. And then to get to go back there and like look at this spine that was like just the gnarliest thing I could possibly imagine ever, like just getting over this spine and to like drop in and just like cruise over it. Like, oh yeah, that's so not cool. A big deal at all. Or like all these like little features where like I was learning tricks, you know, and like then going back years later and yeah, just the scale of it is like so much smaller than like I remember it in my head, and just what the skate parks
just
were
a good point of reflection, man.
Totally. Yeah. It was really cool to do that.
Yeah. I was going to ask if going back the experience, like if it was kind of the same, like if nothing changed, you know, it was one of those experiences where you come back and it's like, oh man, this is exactly how I remember it. But it kind of sounds like it downsized it a lot because you had all these other experiences.
Totally. Yeah. I would say like a mix of the two, like the actual physical place. Like Hawaii is weird because it's kind of like a really big small town, you know? So it's like same old people, same old thing. Like families have lived there for generations. Everything stays pretty similar, you know, like especially in like some of the more rural areas, you know, like it was shockingly exactly the same. And then also just like my perspective of what we were riding like at the skate parks was so different, you know?
Cool.
Yeah.
Was the scene out there pretty big when you were growing up or like pretty small, like because you were in a rural area? So did you have to like travel around to like ride with different people?
Yeah, I had like my best friend growing up there. We kind of rode BMX together a lot. He was like a moto kid and got in a pretty bad accident and hurt his back, like broke his back. And they like told him he was never going to walk again kind of thing. And this is when we were like, you know, 14 or whatever. But he actually had like this kind of miracle surgery and made all these comebacks, and he like still doesn't have a lot of mobility, but that was like the one thing that we could still do was ride like the BMX bikes together. Like he couldn't really ride the moto anymore. So that was like my best friend, and that was just how we spent our time. Like in my yard too, I'd like built dirt jumps and we had a half pipe at one point. Like it was cool. It was pretty fun. So yeah, the scene was not big on the Big Island. Like there was almost no BMX riders. It was like the most fringe thing you could do there. Like there are a couple people, like I think you've met them too, that were around when I was there.
Yeah.
That are still there, just like kind of doing their thing. But yeah, the scene was just non-existent on the Big Island. We had a couple 6 skate parks, but yeah, just not a ton of riders. But like I said, I would go to Oahu a lot, and the scene there was way bigger. Still is. Like there's just more people, so there's more of that going on, and then like more straight BMX dedicated bike shops and more skate parks and just kind of more of everything. So the scene there was really fun for me to kind of be a part of. Like
that's cool at a young age to get to go over there and experience that, and then like come back home and like tell all your friends about that too.
Totally.
Like, that's pretty special.
Yeah. It was sick. It was cool. Like, yeah, kind of passing that torch between the islands of like, you know, upping the level of riding and getting people stoked. But I remember on Oahu, we had just these, like, there was probably 10 or 15 dudes maybe that like were all kind of connected and a part of the scene. And like, I didn't have a license, you know, I was like 12 or I guess 13 or so. I don't know how old I was, but I would ride the bus from like one side of the island to the other. And I would get there and there'd be like 15 dudes on BMX bikes, and we just ride street like all over downtown Honolulu for like, you know, all day. And it was just the most like kind of random group of people too. There were like young Hawaiian kids. There was like this dude that was a cop that just loved Flatland who would just cruise around with us, who was super funny to ride with. Like it was just the most ridiculous like group of people, and we'd ride street. Like the island's pretty small, so you could really like cover some ground. And we would just ride street like all over Honolulu. We'd end up at skate parks, like all over the place. Yeah, those days on the BMX bike, like when I was young in Oahu, were really cool for sure. Just like experiencing like that camaraderie and like a scene around this thing that I really enjoyed for the first time was rad for sure.
Sick, dude. So talking about, you know, the scene, getting to go over to Oahu and experience that, and then also like coming back to Big Island at an older age, like growing up, did you even think that a BMX bike could take you around the world, or like did you have any idea of it becoming a career at some point in time, or were you just having fun riding bikes?
I think I was really just having fun. Like that's the dream, you know. Like I remember when I was super young, like my mom still has saved these like little, school assignments where it's like, Jimmy, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was like, I want to be a professional surfer or this or that. So like, I think that idea was kind of always in my head, but the reality of it definitely never like sunk in when I was a kid in Hawaii. Like it was just an obsession and this thing that I love to do and love to get better at. And it stayed that for like a really long time for sure.
Heck yeah. Speaking on the surfing aspect of things, were there any other sports outside of BMX? I mean, obviously it sounds like surfing was a big thing. But...
Yeah. Unfortunately, I was a little bodyboarder the whole time I lived in Hawaii, but so I could punch a little bit above my weight class, like as far as waves, because I was on a bodyboard. So like my dad lived on the North Shore for a little bit. So like I was just this little tiny white kid like out at Pipeline on like some of the smaller days trying to get barreled on a bodyboard. So that was definitely like a thing I would do. And like I remember there were days my dad worked in like downtown Honolulu where I would literally drive into work with him and I would have like a backpack, my bodyboard, my little fins and like some snacks and stuff. And he would drop me off at Waikiki Beach and just leave me there for 8 hours.
Whoa.
And I would just like, if the waves were good, I would rip, like I would meet like friends and we would do random stuff. I was like, kind of like one of the only white kids like around. So I would always like sneak into hotels and get free towels and like drinks from the like mini bar and stuff. Cause I would just say, it's like, oh yeah, my last name's Smith. I don't remember my room number. And they would kind of fork over whatever I'd ask for. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of fun stuff going on besides, just the BMX in Hawaii. I actually played baseball a ton. Like there was kind of a point towards the end of my time in Hawaii and right when I moved to Springfield where I was like, okay, like you kind of need to choose between these two things because they're both taking up like a lot of your time and energy. And like I was like on a traveling like all-star team when I was there. And like I played freshman baseball like at our high school in Hawaii and they upgraded me to JV and then upgraded me to varsity. So I was like kind of on this baseball path for sure. And if I stayed in Hawaii, I probably would have kept doing that because, like, I don't know if anyone knows this, but like Hawaii has an insane Little League team. So they've won the Little League World Series like a bunch of times and stuff. So there's definitely like a pipeline of like, yeah, you can be a baseball player if you live in Hawaii, but it wasn't really like I was the only kid riding BMX and my coaches hated it and whatnot. But yeah, whenever we moved to Missouri, I like kind of vibe checked the baseball team at the high school there. And I was like, I don't really like these dudes and some of them kind of became my friends later, but yeah, at the time I was like, it's time to just like switch to BMX because this is too fun. Like there's a 6 skate park now, and yeah, that was kind of like where my focus went.
Was that the thing that like flipped your mindset to on the BMX to be like, oh, this could be a career, I can pursue this at a higher level, like kind of choosing between those two passions?
Yeah, totally. I don't think I ever, it was always just like an obsession and something I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think when I moved to Missouri, like I kind of started getting better and like experiencing some of like the attention from like, oh, like other people are telling me I'm good at this thing. And I think that's kind of when like the light switch turned on for me. And then at one point, like when I was riding BMX, I started doing like stunt shows in Springfield.
Whoa.
And so I was like 15, 16 years old and like, I would go ride my bike and like hit a box jump a couple times, and then someone would hand me a check for like $500. And
how did that come about?
That was a crazy one. So it was actually like a ministry. Like I'm not like a super religious person or anything, but like Southwest Missouri is like you're kind of the buckle of the Bible Belt down there. So it's a part of everything that's going on. And there was this guy, Joe West, who's kind of like old like Dew Tour kind of, like medalist, X Games adjacent BMX dude. And he was a ripper and he had his own skate park in Springfield.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, dude.
Wow.
So Joe kind of played a big part in like, that was the first like professional BMXer that like I got to really spend time around. So that for me was a bit of like that green light of like, okay, like you can like make a living doing this thing. Like here's this guy who lives in your town who like, this is his job, So yeah, I think that point was kind of when I thought about it in that way, but I just was like pretty content just riding and progressing and not super worried about that stuff. Like it got to a point where I just like I wanted support because I just would break stuff and like wanted to ride like nice parts and couldn't really afford them and stuff like that. So that's kind of when I started thinking about it like that a little bit, towards the end of high school.
Yeah. Joe
But-
West, man, that's a name I haven't heard in a
Yeah,
minute. What a
dude.
sick like role model to like
Oh, yeah.
grow up around. Too.
Yeah, he was a solid dude. Yeah, he basically like gave me a key to that skate park at a certain point, and we would do like these kind of like low key sessions where like people pay $10 and show up, and like he'd be out of town, and like I was like running those sessions,
Whoa.
you know, like
Wow.
and I could just show up to the skate park and like film stuff, you know, like it's an empty skate park, and it was sick. Like it was a sick skate
I do
park.
remember talking about it now, like you posting all those clips on Instagram of riding that park, and it had like a big like vert ramp in the back too. didn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Like the whole back end of the skate park was like this huge vert wall, like all the way to the ceiling. And then there was like this really nice, like quarter to like 10-foot, like really mellow bank quarter pipe situation. So, I mean, for Joe, like he was building stuff to basically like get the reps in on tricks that he was trying to learn or just dial in or whatever. So there's like a foam pit, big box jump, and it was always in some, you know, form of being torn down and rebuilt at the same time. You
That's
know?
cool.
Yeah, it was a cool like moment and cool time to ride bikes, especially in that town. Like the scene, even still, is like super strong. Like Red's BMX is like a dedicated BMX shop in this little town in the Midwest. Which
Shout
is like,
out to them. They buy
Yeah.
coffee from us every now and then,
Hell
dude.
yeah,
I always
yeah.
get stoked because like I've never met them, but
Yeah.
like knowing them
Yeah.
through you and Grant, like it's a pretty cool thing.
Totally,
So,
yeah.
cool.
Kyle, the dude who runs that shop, has just been like a part of the scene forever, you know. So it's sick to see them like holding it down there in like this little kind of Midwest town, just
so
doing their
cool,
thing.
man.
Yeah.
So at what point did you start coming to visit Colorado? Because obviously you live here now. So like,
Yeah.
Had you ever come here before you moved to Missouri and like found your love for Colorado?
Yeah, so whenever my mom and I were moving from Hawaii to Springfield, Missouri, my dad was moving from Hawaii, like on Oahu, to Longmont, actually. So, like we had kind of, my parents like made this decision that we were moving, and during that time, we had to like fly to California and wait for like a shipping container to show up with all our stuff in it, you know. So that takes
Whoa.
like a couple weeks. And like during that kind of downtime in this like huge cross country move, or, you know, cross planet move, it felt like, I flew from California to DIA, and my dad picked me up, and he was kind of just vibe checking Longmont as like, is this a place I want to live? He had like a job opportunity nearby. So yeah, that was in like 2009 when I was 14. And literally the first thing that we did when I got here basically was go to Sandstone. And as soon as I got there, you and Matt Cordova were both there. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like these guys are ripping.
So bizarre.
And we became friends pretty fast. Like I wasn't afraid to talk to people at that point, and like just said what's up. And yeah, Matt like kind of took me under his wing a little bit during that time, and like would just drive me like up to Windsor or like wherever else to go ride, you know. And like I was, you know, 14, 15, so I didn't have a license or anything. And all of a sudden, like I moved from Hawaii and kind of am on my way to Missouri and land here, and like there's all these sick concrete skate parks, which is just like my favorite thing to ride. And yeah, just got to kind of explore all that. So I think, you know, when I was pretty young, in hindsight, is my first time coming here, and I definitely remember like going to Boulder and being like, whoa, this place is different. Like this is a crazy spot. Like kind of this is where I want to be, you know. And took a while, but yeah, ended up back here once I graduated college.
Totally. Yeah. And you were like coming out every summer in between, like during high school as
Yeah,
well,
totally.
and college, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
pretty much every summer, and sometimes during the winter to snowboard.
Yeah, yeah. Literally anytime I had a break from school, I was traveling and riding my bike was kind of my goal. So all through high school, you know, my dad was living in Longmont. So, you know, I would fly out from Missouri and get to spend time with him and get to ride and kind of make some money too, doing the insulation thing. Like as a young gun, that was sweet because I could work a little bit, and then I'd have a little bit of pocket change to go like on a weekend long road trip or whatever it might be to go ride some stuff.
Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
So obviously, you know, you're living in Springfield, right? At the time.
Yeah.
That's where you were, right?
Yeah, Springfield, Missouri. Yep.
And then you ended up going to school in Springfield as well, right?
Yep.
College.
Yep, exactly.
What did you study in college?
Marketing and sales management.
Heck yeah.
I had some unique like option. My stepdad was in Vietnam, so I was able to get like kind of a grant to go to school through him, through like the VA and everything. So I was able to like go to college there and not have to pay a bunch of money out of pocket. I had some like academic scholarships and whatnot. So yeah, went to a little community college and then moved over to Missouri State, which is like a, state university. And yeah, I got a degree in marketing and sales management. It was what it was called, which has been super helpful as an athlete for sure.
I was going to ask why you chose like those things to study in school.
Yeah. I think part of it was like, I didn't know what to choose, and like business seemed like a vein that was going to go through everything I did in my life. And that kind of made the most sense to me. As an adult, like engineering and economics and like all these different, subjects are like way more interesting to me. And I, in hindsight, would have loved to have done those. But yeah, it was a super good, just kind of like basics of how to run a business and how to think about marketing and how to think about sales and what's important and what's not, and it was like in college, I was kind of an athlete at the time too. So it was cool. And I worked for Red Bull as like a student brand manager, which is a pretty cool position. But I was able to basically like have this degree and like go through my education and then apply the things I was learning like real time, whether it was like, talking to like Profile or Sunday or like the BMX companies I worked with, or in this Red Bull position, like being a marketer for them at my campus. It was like this really cool way to both learn the stuff and then apply it at the same time, which I think made it stick a lot harder.
That's super unique. Yeah. Like I
sure.
feel like not a lot of people have that opportunity while they're learning something to like actually practice it. Cause that's like the one thing I always struggle with, like with the idea of school is like you learn something and then like you're waiting to get this job to go practice it, but getting to do those things in unison, like that's pretty rad, man.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, was there kind of like a idea for a quote unquote big kid job that you were going for during school, or was this kind of the plan to implement all of these things that you're learning right away and just see how far that can go?
I think so. I just knew I wanted to go to school. Like no one in my family like followed that track, of like go to high school, go to college, get a degree, get a job. Like, so I felt like I had the opportunity to do it with these scholarships and whatnot, just like on the financial side. And I don't know, it felt like a box like I really wanted to check. So I was riding BMX like pretty competitively. I think when I was in college really was when I was the most competitive and like most focused on BMX. And that kind of took me like through a bunch of contests, and like I got to travel a ton. I got to go to Woodward a bunch. I got to like start seeing some like success there, and I got to start seeing like what a career in that would look like, and I kind of ultimately like decided like that's not really like what I want to do for money, while I was in college, which was on the tail end of like breaking my collarbone and then getting healthy from that and like knocking myself out super bad. And I was like, oh, that's not sick, because I was riding at such a high level at the time. Like the margin for error is so small.
And you were progressing so quickly too. Man. So like that combination of things is usually a recipe for hitting the ground a couple times.
Yeah, totally. So like I kind of slammed pretty good a few times, like in quick succession. And I was like, all right, wait a second. Like, what am I doing here? Like, is this what I want to do? Like,
do I want a lifetime of this?
Yeah. Like, and then really like hit my head. Like I had never done that. Like, luckily I got through most of my BMX career with like not a lot of injury, like I stayed pretty safe through all that. And that was just a bit of a wake up call of like, oh, like I can't be ringing my bell like this. Like it's not sustainable. And like, a lot of like CTE research and stuff was kind of emerging at that same time. So my gear started turning for sure. Like while I was in college, still riding a ton and loving it, of like, okay, like maybe this isn't exactly how I want to like go about making a living, like it's fun, but like as soon as it becomes a job, it's like kind of not as fun, So yeah, that's when the Red Bull like job kind of came up. And I was like, well, if I'm not going to like ride BMX professionally, I want to just be like in that world, like at the pinnacle of it. And I got that job and it was super sick, and kind of a feeder position for like Red Bull's like whole marketing program. So I got a like nice inside look at what that actually looks like and who the players are and what's going on. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this either. Like I'm not ready for this kind of job, like I want to be like out in the mix. Like I'm not.
That ends up being pretty high stress behind a computer.
Oh, totally,
like,
dude.
Quite a bit.
And like, I still think like the role of like an athlete marketing manager is like so sick at Red Bull. And I would love to do that, because I think that requires like a skill set of like being able to like hang with these dudes and really understand like who they are and what they're doing and how they're motivated. And then also like, okay, how can we like throw all these dollars at you and make something that you're stoked on and the brand's stoked on? And I still think that position would be cool, but it was pretty clear to me like I would be trying to climb this like corporate ladder for quite a while to get to a point where I was actually like excited and enjoying what I was doing. So it was kind of around that time that like the mountain bike just slipped into my life through like a roommate. Actually, he had like a lefty, I think, and I'm pretty sure it was an XC bike, but I went and bought these like downhill bars from a bike shop and slapped them on there, and I was like, I'm ready to rip. That's dude sweet. Like this thing's sick. So I had like all this BMX skill, and yeah, just kind of hopped on that thing and was like, whoa, this is
possible.
Yeah, like this is a different world, you know, like it was so mind-blowing to me. Like,
and that's like around the time that like Bentonville starting to emerge in your area too, right?
Totally.
That's like 2 hours from Springfield, right?
Yeah. So yeah, like hour and a half, really. It's super close. So yeah, like I guess that's kind of my intro to like riding mountain bikes was my roommate's lefty. And that kind of progressed into me like wanting my own bike. Some people, I think I had this other job in college working for this group that kind of managed a mountain bike park in Springfield or just south of Springfield called Two Rivers. So I would like go to Two Rivers and was like seeing people ride, and there was like an XC race going on and all this stuff. And I was like there like working, you know, like for this company that kind of managed it. And they, someone there was like, hey, you should like do this race. And I was like, okay, like that sounds cool. So like I was into like some cutoffs and a BMX helmet, and someone gave me like, I think like a 160 travel like trail bike to do this XC race.
No,
and I was I was in Vans, like flats, like full BMX kid.
Everybody
you know?
out there's in Lycra.
Yeah, dude,
like,
yeah. But like at that point, like I'd been riding my roommate's bike around a little bit. I had a fixie that I would use to like get to school and stuff, and like kind of started chasing Strava segments on that as like something to do for fun. So like the engine was starting, and like I had the bike control and everything kind of come together, and they just like put me on this bike and we're like, all right, have fun on this XC race. And I got like second or something and was like battling, you know, I was just like fully like stoked, like just so excited to be riding the bike, but I was kind of just ripping, you know, and like the level of riding there isn't like crazy, you know? So like I was able to kind of, that gave me a taste of like racing for the first time. And then also just like mountain biking more than just like riding my roommate's bike around kind of thing.
When I feel like you have such a competitive personality that you were just like, oh, I can compete in this now. Dude. Like this is cool.
Yeah. And that was one of the things like with BMX, like when I was kind of finding my way in that, like the competition aspect was something I enjoyed. And like, I enjoyed that way, like version of pushing myself and the kind of risk you have to take, but also like landing all your tricks and putting runs together. And I loved competing, but like at the end of a contest, like your result is up to a judge, you know, it's like
so subjective.
It's like an art piece, you know, like someone could do like a triple whip over a box and like land super shitty and like slip a pedal and like win a contest.
Yeah.
And I was like putting these lines together and like being super smooth and stylish and going high and like
going both directions.
Yeah. Like getting super techie about like which way I'm throwing my bars and spinning and like all this stuff. And like, then someone would basically be like, no, like not a triple whip, not a double flip, like not like it's just, I don't know. It was frustrating for me from like a competitive aspect to like, you know, feel like I just painted this beautiful picture at this skate park. And then someone's like, we don't like that one, like kind of thing.
So I'm kind of gathering that you were a park guy on the BMX, not a street guy. I
guess, I mean, like,
more competitive in the park realm.
I think that was like where my skill set was best competitively, but like, even today, like I'm kind of this all arounder just because I enjoy doing so many different types of things. So like on the BMX bike, like I was just as happy like riding street at a big set of dirt jumps or at a skate park. Cool. Like it didn't matter to me like what it was. Like I enjoyed all of it. And I think I was pretty well rounded in like all those areas too. Like I still have like a bunch of edits that are just living on the internet that are like almost all street or all dirt or all park, you know, like
cool. I'm gonna have to check those out because I haven't seen you on a BMX bike ever.
Like, like I said earlier, street edit that I really enjoyed, man.
Cool.
Yeah. Speaking of, I forgot about that. So,
like I said earlier, I only know you as the enduro Jimmy Smith. I didn't know any of this BMX background.
Yeah,
so this
totally.
is cool.
Yeah, it was played a huge part and definitely like laid the foundation for sure for me to like hop on that mountain bike at that race the first time and just kind of do well, you know, like so. Yeah. That was super sick.
Did you feel those like bike control skills transfer over pretty easily? Because obviously it's a much bigger vehicle, and even you know now going from the mountain bike to the BMX bike, like it takes time to adjust. But
totally,
how did that kind of work for you?
Yeah, like the BMX bike in my mind is like, especially if you're doing it proficiently, like there are no better bike handlers in the world than BMX riders.
Yeah.
Like the level of precision and technicality and like the way you have to move the bike around and everything, like my bike control meter, was like filled up to the roof. So as soon as I hopped on a mountain bike, like I was able to just have fun, first of all, which was sweet because like I could see something in front of me and just jump over it or go around it or whatever. And like still what I'm continuing to get better at and learn is just the intricacies of like braking and cornering and traction and suspension. So like
we've been talking about that recently too, like the cornering aspect of mountain bikes that isn't really there on the BMX
coming
bike
from like a little bike where you don't have to worry about like, okay, like how do I load the suspension? Like that's
totally
something you never learn, obviously, because it just doesn't exist on a rigid BMX bike.
Yeah. So like, I mean, like, and again, like the bike control's there, but like just that feel for like what's happening at like where the tire hits the ground on a mountain bike was something that I kind of had a feel for right away, but is still like the thing that is like kind of the most interesting to me and like an area I put a ton of focus in still. Like you can always get better at cornering or braking or whatever it is. But yeah, I mean, riding a brakeless BMX bike on like a huge set of dirt jumps, like you're sliding around, you're like having to like pump the back of a lip to like slow down. Like there's just
so much like pump, anti-pump, like
and then
trying to stay stuck to the ground.
Exactly. And even like on a BMX bike, like at a skate park, they get slippery and you break traction and like you drift a little bit, So like just those kind of things all just laid a foundation for when I did finally hop on a mountain bike to like make it, really, really fun to do.
That's sweet.
Before we get too far away from BMX, I'm curious if you have a favorite like contest or result over those years that like stands out to you. Maybe it was the vibes the day of the contest or whatever, but like which one stands out in your mind?
Man, I think contest wise, so there's a skate park in St. Louis called Ramp Riders. It's legendary. It's still there. It's insane. Like they basically have wood dirt jumps inside and like huge box jumps and like a huge vert wall and like a street section and this crazy horseshoe wall ride. It's an absolutely like,
and it's looked the same forever,
dude,
too.
It's
just amazing.
It's crazy when you go in there. It's like kind of in the hood in St. Louis. And like, it was always such a highlight for me. Like once I finally got my license to drive, like the 2.5 hours with just me and my homies from Springfield up to St. Louis and like ride these amazing skate parks. But there was this like contest series called the Recon Tour. I don't know if you remember that.
I do remember that.
It was like put on by Monster, I think. I don't know. But
yeah, it was like the Monster Cedar contest for like Dew Tour or X Games.
Exactly.
Kinda,
yeah. So the Recon Tour basically came to St. Louis, and that was kind of like the closest thing to like, like a big race at like a home mountain or that kind of dynamic, and I won that contest, and that kind of like launched me into like, oh, like, yeah, maybe BMX is a thing I can do, and that was really sick. And then like when you win that contest, you basically like you get your ticket punched to like the rest of the stops of the Recon Tour. And at that point, I think there was only one, but it was the what's the skate park in Toms River, New Jersey, like Incline Club or something,
Club, yep.
Which was like a dream of mine to go ride.
Because that's where like Scotty Kramer, like that was his skate park. Garrett Reynolds, like
all those like New
BMX
Jersey
royalty.
Yeah, exactly. Like the New Jersey shredders, like that was their spot. And like I always just remember like the sick edits that would come out from that place. So yeah, winning that contest in St. Louis was like really cool. And then to be able to like, have Monster basically fly me to the skate park to do this bigger contest was just like such a cool like journey to be on for sure.
If I remember right, Chris Fox was the judge at the Recon in St. Louis as well, right?
I'm not sure if he was a judge.
He was there.
I think he was there in St. Louis, but he was a judge at Incline Club.
Okay.
And I did compete at Incline Club and like made it into finals, like with all these like Dew Tour and X Games dudes. And like, yeah, the level of riding I was on at that time was like really sick. And I was just kind of going like the highest and I was the most stylish and I was able to like spin both ways. And yeah, that skate park, I was able to put just together some really memorable, fun runs in that contest for sure. But yeah, and then like going to Woodward, man, like that is just like a huge highlight of my life too. Like I never got to go as a kid, like I think our generation, like Woodward at the time, there was like a TV show. It was just like
that was like the pinnacle place everybody wanted to go. It was like Disneyland for BMX riders.
More so, dude. It was like heaven. It wasn't even like of this world. Yeah, like, and I still feel that way about it. It's incredible. And so getting to go to Woodward the first couple times was like a huge highlight for me in BMX, because like all of a sudden, like all this stuff that didn't really seem real, you know, is like in front of you, like Cloud9 and like all this like iconic skate
stuff
parks.
That's literally in a video game. You're
exactly.
Looking at it
yeah.
in person.
And it's like, oh my God. Yeah. And I never got to go as a kid. So like, I feel like it meant that much more to me to like finally go. Like I turned 18 basically in that first summer. There was another like pretty sick BMXer, Will Thompson from Springfield, who was on the staff at Woodward and like kind of running the BMX program. So I was able to like hit him up and get a job, you know, just like as a camp counselor and like a instructor there. So it was, those times of my life were some of the best for sure at Woodward. It's like just such an insane place. And then the progression that would happen while you're there was just like
insane,
so crazy. Like that dynamic of like, I explained earlier, of like going back to Hawaii and like seeing those skate parks after like experiencing all this stuff, I would feel every time I went from Woodward back home, you know, like everything just felt smaller. Everything that was hard before felt easier. And like my level of riding was just going up so much there, because you're just like surrounded by the best people to do it. You know?
I had a very similar experience, and I remember that so vividly the first time I came home from Woodward and like went to Sandstone Skate Park, which is, you know, 2 miles from where we sit right now. But I remember, and everything's pretty big there. And I remember pulling up there and I was like, why does everything feel tiny? Yeah. Not realizing that like everything at Woodward was just that much bigger.
Yeah.
And everybody is riding it on that level that's that much bigger as well, which is, it's crazy because, you know, you're riding it with people who are now have gone to the Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or are now, you know, seeding to go to the Olympics.
Yeah. Like Brian Fox, he was like one of the dudes around, and Jay Dalton. I don't know if you know that kid,
best
but like
BMX rider ever.
Oh yeah, he's my favorite rider. Shout out to Jay Dalton, my boy.
Yeah, he's so good.
Haven't seen him in a minute. I think he's been riding mountain bikes lately, which is really exciting for me. But like Jamie Bestwick was just like around. Jeremiah Smith. Like I remember I was outside like on like a break basically between like instructing and like whatever my other jobs were there. And I was just sitting on this, there's like this mini ramp outside that's 8 foot tall with a spine in the middle.
Oh yeah.
Ryan Nyquist just rolls up. He's like, hey, what's up, dude? Like fist bump, drops in, flip bars, this 8 foot spine, like as a warm up. And I was like, what? Like this place is not real, dude.
Yeah,
like this is crazy. Insane. And the amount of just like random people who are from that like area, like State College, Pennsylvania and the surrounding area, it's like a huge Amish community, but there'd be these like random kids who like found their way to Woodward and are just like have lived this kind of simple Amish life their whole life, and all of a sudden are like some of the sicker BMX riders I've ever seen and never heard of. Like it's just, I don't know, Woodward East specifically is just one of the most magical places
that's crazy
in this world. Yeah.
Do you think, because you were talking about kind of the progression that came with being around all these people, but I was a coach, like a camp counselor for a program in Boulder when I was growing up. And there's something special about kind of like dumbing down and getting to the foundational elements when you're trying to instruct younger kids to do these like really simple things on a bike. Do you think that had anything to do with kind of that development improvement for yourself as a rider?
Yeah, totally. Because like I kind of got thrusted into being like an instructor all of a sudden. So now like I have 10 kids that I'm going to spend most of the day with, and we're just going to like work on whatever they want to work on, or kind of just do whatever they want to do within reason, you know, like they're usually trying to while out pretty hard, but
I want a backflip.
Yeah. Which we would do too, which was fun. But yeah, no, that was totally a part of it. And like sometimes like every week you'd have a different group basically. And sometimes I would have kids in my group that were as good as I was, you know, like, I don't know. Do you know Riley Jordan?
Oh yeah.
He was one of my like,
that's crazy.
I was his counselor.
I think that's like one of the unique things there. Like what you're describing is you could have somebody who is very beginner, like they barely have ever ridden BMX, all the way up to somebody who is essentially like pro level rider.
Yeah.
And like, then you're also hanging out with these kids while they're learning things.
Totally.
And like, you know, you've already been riding BMX for a certain period of time, but when somebody learns something new for the first time, that like refuels your stoke too.
No, yeah.
You know?
It was, being there was just, that definitely filled the cup. I tried not to stay there too long because it was like a world you could definitely get sucked into, but like, you would kind of go, and when you work there in these 3-week blocks, and I would do that, every single year at least once. And yeah, it was amazing, and definitely like teaching kids how to like do a bunny hop. You kind of think about it in a different way than you've ever thought about it. Or like, how are you going to like carve this bowl corner? Oh yeah, like there is technique to this. You kind of get to this point where you're just doing all this stuff. But yeah, it definitely like helps your own understanding of what you're doing when you're teaching someone who's like trying it for the first time,
Yeah, that's really cool. So before we jumped into the big topic, which is the mountain bike career.
Yeah.
I think we're missing something which is pretty fundamental, which is your time in coffee.
Oh,
like,
yeah, man.
At what point did you find coffee? Because you worked in coffee for a really long time.
I did,
and technically you still kind of have your hand in the coffee world.
Yeah,
so
slanging some spros every once in a while.
We're going to get into that in a little bit, but I want to know like, where you found coffee the first time and how that started working out for you.
Yeah. So, my boy Joe West, he had that skate park, and kind of around that same time, I was like 15, 16 years old. He actually opened a really sick spot called The Hub, which was a literal just BMX shop and a coffee shop. But in Springfield, like at that time, there was one other coffee shop called The Coffee Ethic that's still there. Super amazing. They do a great job. Love them. But they opened a shop that was like kind of on that third wave, like first peak kind of thing. So they had like a really cool old like lever espresso machine, and they carried Intelligentsia coffee. And at the time, like that was kind of like,
that was the thing.
The thing. Like they were killing it the most. And they were like, but that was kind of like my first exposure to it. Eventually Joe moved on to this other coffee shop, and I was in like high school at that time and had my license and could drive around. So I ended up working at this coffee shop called Classic Rock Coffee, which was ridiculous. It was like this classic rock themed coffee shop, but we had Joe there like roasting, who's pretty serious about coffee, and we had like a super nice espresso machine, and kind of like through our little community, like had a staff that was like really down with like specialty coffee. So like, started there basically in like high school, like 17 years old, like learning how to pull shots and, pour latte art and stuff like that. And
it's also crazy to me that specialty coffee was thriving in the Midwest like that.
Yeah, man. It's crazy to me too. Like that town, I think still is like an outlier for like good coffee, and like in that, part of the country, like there's not a ton of it. But yeah, like Tom, who started the Coffee Ethic, was kind of, I think, the stake in the ground that kind of gave everyone the exposure to it. And then, as time goes on and it gets more popular, it just kind of like expanded there. But yeah, it was pretty crazy. I ended up working at kind of the evolution of the hub called Kingdom Coffee for a little bit. And then Brick and Mortar, which is, like Traction's kind of original OG roaster, Noe, was our roaster at Brick and Mortar. And yeah, that was like kind of how I made money all through college, was working barista jobs.
So cool.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. You going back to that competitive mindset that you have, like you got really good at pouring latte art. Like I just remember like not into coffee at all myself, and Jimmy's posting like these beautiful lattes. Like I don't even know where to get one of these lattes at this point in my life, and you're posting these beautifully like poured lattes.
Yeah,
and, like,
man.
You got deep in it, man.
Yeah,
it was super cool to watch.
I just want to, so you were through school, you were juggling school, competing BMX racing, these barista jobs, the Red Bull gig. Wasn't there something else that you said earlier that you were?
I'd always like in the summer and winter breaks, like I would come out here and work for my dad's like insulation company, basically to like stack a bunch of cheddar.
So you were just doing all of that at once and like fine with it?
Yeah, man. Like,
holy smokes,
it was kind of gnarly. Like there was some overlap with the Red Bull stuff and the coffee shop and school and, mountain biking and BMX. But
I mean, I think you need to find ways to tie them into each other if you're managing all of that.
No, totally. And like, for me, like working at the coffee shop was almost like my break in my day, or like my, week or whatever. It was like the shifts I was working, because I just enjoyed it so much. And like every shop we worked at, like, besides Classic Rock Coffee, like I was playing my own music, and it was like this vibe, and like my friends were coming in, and I was really excited about coffee, and I wanted to share that with people. So never really felt like work, it felt like just hanging out, like pulling really good shots of espresso, especially at Brick and Mortar. We had a really cool little era there where we were all just super excited about what we were doing, and like it was a very fun place to hang out. And yeah, so the coffee shop part was kind of, even though it was like part of my income, was always felt like a bit of like a break. Like I didn't have to do like
That's cool.
schoolwork or, like it was just something that, like filled my time, paid me a little bit. I was passionate about and just kind of got to like play and have fun almost.
I feel like it kind of like parallels BMX too, in the way that you could like be stylistic with it and like you can change parameters here and there.
Totally.
And like, yeah, you can see what this input does to the outcome of the drink or whatever.
Yeah.
So being able to like build upon that outside of BMX where like you're experiencing these injuries, you're like, oh, I can kind of get the same satisfaction over here without hitting the ground.
Yeah, totally. I think I was just, I just find things I'm interested in and kind of like immerse myself in them. And that was definitely one of them for sure. And like you're saying, it's still a little bit of a part of my life, but yeah, the coffee game's sick and always a fan. I've got an espresso machine at home now, so I'm pouring my latte art just for myself.
I need to come over and get a little crash course in like dialed latte art. All I can do is a heart.
Yeah, man.
I can't even do that.
It's very difficult. Like I worked in coffee shops, so really what helps is the reps, you know, like if you're pumping out like lattes all day long, like you're going to try and pour latte art in every single one of them. And then having some people around you who are, doing it well also helps a ton for sure.
Heck yeah. So let's now fast forward back to that first mountain bike race. Where does it go from there?
Yeah, man. So that was pretty like captivating to me. Yeah, like I was saying earlier, hopped on this trail bike, did this XC race and flat pedals and cutoffs and a BMX helmet and like did pretty well and was like, whoa, this is fun. And around that time, there was someone in like the scene in Springfield, Jesse Livingston. He's still like a friend. He's a trail builder. But he was like, hey, dude, like, have you ever heard of enduro racing? And I was like, definitely not. And, like turned on Red Bull TV. And at the time, it was kind of like the beginning of enduro racing, really. It was like,
I was going to ask what year that was, because like for anybody that doesn't know, enduro is like a relatively new.
It's like within the last decade.
Yeah, 100% within the last decade for sure. So like, I think it kind of started like, I don't really know, honestly, but like probably 2012 to like 2014, I would say, is when enduro kind of became this thing from my point of view anyway. But yeah, like my buddy asked me, like, have you ever considered like an enduro race? And I was like, no, like, what's that? And turned on Red Bull TV, and On Track with Curtis Keene was like getting pumped out at that time. And that was like, oh, whoa, like BMX, like I had kind of explored that world. And there was like kind of like this look into this other like dimension that I had never even realized was a thing. And like kind of from whenever I was watching that show until kind of now, or like the last couple of years, like that has been my goal, is to race EWS and like be a part of that and do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got into the mountain bike scene in 2008 and like started with cross country kind of the same way that you did, and started kind of really getting pulled into the gravity scene. And it was kind of a similar thing to you, just like the interest was kind of being pulled there, and it seemed like the sport was being pulled in that direction too. So do you think that there's kind of external factors in the mountain bike scene that were kind of just like, oh, this is where the sport is progressing? Or was that a pretty personal thing that you were kind of like, XC is not really my thing. This enduro thing seems to fit me a little bit more.
At that point in time, from like, I'm looking to just have an experience and like go do a thing, enduro seemed so cool. Cause like in Springfield, we have almost no elevation. So like there are 2 places to ride there, or there's more now, which is really cool. But yeah, there was the Two Rivers Bike Park, which is kind of like this machine built, flowy kind of terrain, pretty undulating, but like there's no sustained downhills from my perspective, at least now. And then Sac River, which was this like hand built, like really old, like probably late 90s, early 2000s mountain bike trail system that was in Springfield that when I go back today, I love, but literally like at that property or like where the trails are, there's probably 150 feet of elevation change.
Yeah.
So like for me, the idea of going downhill for a long time was like so sick, because I was only getting these like little snippets of it, So yeah.
Where did you experience your first like long sustained downhill then?
So yeah, I kind of want to back up a little bit because I feel like there's some me getting into mountain bike that we got to cover. So yeah, like did that XC race. My roommate had this Cannondale Lefty that I put downhill bars on. So I just started kind of being a madman and like riding that thing as much as I could. And then I just started breaking it, and I was like, okay, like I can't just destroy my roommate's bike. Shout out to my roommate for, letting me do that. But yeah, I bought a pretty clapped out Rocky Mountain demo bike
I remember that bike
from
actually.
a bike shop locally. Like I was just so annoying, I'm sure, to them, because I was just like, I don't have, like, these bikes are insane. Like I cannot pay for this. Like I was buying BMX bikes and I thought they were expensive, So like I finally like figured out like, oh, I can buy a demo bike for like half the price of a regular one. And I bought this like Rocky Mountain, kind of like 160 travel demo bike that was, just this used bike. And that's when things like really took off for me. Cause I had my own bike and I could just go ride whenever I wanted to. It wasn't based on anyone else's schedule. And I became like super obsessed. And my buddy Jesse ended up taking me, to an enduro race in Anniston, Alabama. There's some trails there, which is crazy.
Wow.
And yeah, just like, I think I'd maybe done like a local race in Springfield, like an enduro race for the first time, and like did pretty well and was like, okay, sick. And so I went down to Anniston, Alabama and just entered the pro class and like just did this race and learned so much. And was like, for me, like at that point, it was more of like, can I like finish this bike ride? Like it wasn't like, can I be as fast as possible on all these descents? It was like, oh my God, like this course
Just
is
can I get to the
20
end of
miles
this?
long and I'm climbing like how much, like this is crazy. So yeah, did that, like got like 8th, I think, in the pro class.
Nice.
And I was like, oh shoot, like I can kind of do this. And then yeah, ended up doing like another race in Oklahoma. Actually, there's like some pretty gnarly mountains down there. The race was called like O-Rock, and it was kind of like that part of the country's version of like a backcountry race, so like a big day on the bike, like ton of riding, like I was cramping like crazy. Like it was just such a wild experience because that was kind of like the first time where I was on like some sustained descents, and I was like experiencing these for the first time while I was racing, and ended up getting like
That's
5th
crazy.
in the pro class there. And that was kind of like, oh, like, whoa, this is a thing. And that was in towards the end of like, I guess 2016.
Okay.
And then like after that race, I pretty much decided like, okay, this is what I want to do. Like the stoke was building from like just kind of seeing what like the Enduro World Series was. That was kind of picking up traction. There were events in the US. It was like, it became this thing that was like such a big goal and like thing that I wanted to try and do, but also approachable. Like there was kind of some clear steps to that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that was a cool time to get into it too, because it was still kind of fringe. Like there was all these small events going on and it's like building up, and
Totally.
like nobody was like overly serious about it yet. Like people were training, but they weren't like
Totally
leaving downhill to come over to that to just clean up yet.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It was really fun. And like, I have to give credit to like the scene in Missouri and Arkansas. Like it was pretty good. Like we had this race series called the Southern Enduro Tour. There was in like Texas and in Arkansas. So like pretty much all winter you could like go to Texas and race a mountain bike. And at this point, like I was still kind of like, that was like the terrain in the world I knew, and it was just so fun to like, instead of like load up and go to a skate park I've been to before or whatever, just to like drive from Missouri to like some random spot in the middle of Texas and like do this enduro race. Like it was all just so new and shiny and fun for me and like exciting, and I just wanted more and more of it.
At this point, had you figured out like, I need to start training for this, or I need to start eating this way, or like planning nutrition? Like,
yeah.
Or were you like kind of discovering that as you went?
I was totally discovering it like all as I went. It kind of happened like really fast within a year. I went from like, hey, this is this thing I kind of want to do, to like buying a training plan off the internet. Like, cause 2016, I was going into my last like semester of college in 2017. So I basically like that race probably happened in like August or something. And I like got like a 5th in the pro class. I was like, all right, sick. Like, let's see what else I can do. And from that point on, like I basically kind of got serious about it. And I think bought like a road bike at that point. And then there was another bike shop in town that kind of like saw that I was like getting good at this. And they were able to get me like another bike for cost that was like newer and better and faster and like better suited to what I was trying to do. So that was like all over kind of like the winter of 2016, 17. And then fast forward to like May of 2017, when I was graduating from college, I literally drove to my last class of like my last final of college that I was ever going to take with everything I owned in my truck, and drove to the class, took my final, left the school and like just started my career as a mountain bike racer. It
Whoa,
was like the
dude,
gnarliest.
that's
Like
sick.
I just jumped in as hard as I could.
What a
What a
story.
cool, yeah, like a closing of a chapter and opening.
Yeah.
up.
That's crazy.
insane.
Yeah, it felt like that too. It was pretty like wild for me. At
Where
the
was
time.
that first race that you drove to?
So it was actually O-Rock.
Oh, okay.
So which is in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And in 2017, which is the first year I really started racing mountain bikes, there was this IMBA National Enduro Series. And so from my point of view, like that was the only thing that was like this all encompassing, like if you want to be an enduro racer in the US, like this series is going to take you across the whole country. And so, yeah, the first race was O-Rock, which was in Oklahoma. And then it was Santa Fe, the BME there.
Mhm.
The next race was North American Enduro Cup in Kellogg, Idaho, which is still my favorite enduro race.
Cool.
And then I think we had a race on the East Coast at Killington.
Yeah.
And then the last race of the season was at North Star in California. So that year, like 2017, I literally like rode my mountain bike from coast to coast and raced it the whole time and like ended up winning that series, which was crazy.
Wow.
And that kind of like launched me into like, okay, yeah, I can maybe do this. Like this is a reality. Like I am doing this, you know?
Yeah. At this point too, like you had kind of just like not said sayonara to the BMX bike, but that thing was kind of just like collecting dust because you're like infatuated with the mountain bike, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It was hard for me to like let go of riding BMX because like the better you are at it, the more fun it is, you know?
Mhm.
So like I could feel like, you know, I kind of made that decision in college, like BMX is not going to be my career. Like I don't want that for myself.
Yeah.
And then, you know, got the Red Bull job and took a peek at that. And then this mountain bike was like reigniting that BMX flame just in a different way. And like, just the whole world was so much bigger and exciting. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to just chase that down as hard as I could. And, you know, the name of this freaking podcast, Scared and Normal, like that was me, like at that point, you know, because like I had gotten a peek into what normal looks like. And I was like, I don't like this at all, you know?
Oh, I love that so
Yeah.
much, man. Like that, even just the idea of you going to school, taking that last final and being like, nah, I'm going to go race bikes. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to go and do what everybody else who took that final is doing, which is like going to get a job.
Totally.
And then you go and win a series.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty crazy. And it took like that amount of commitment to do for sure, you know?
Yeah. So was that kind of a risk for you? Like, was that whole summer of racing pretty much self-funded or funded off of the winnings that you got from each of the races?
Yeah. Yeah. It was crazy. Like, at that point, like the Red Bull job was done, the coffee shop job was done because I left Springfield, and then like the only thing that was left was, you know, like the insulation company that my dad's been running since, you know, 2009 or whatever here on the Front Range. So basically, like I went to that race and then went to the Santa Fe race, did that one, and then I went to my dad's house and just was out in the field like doing insulation work,
Gotcha.
you know, to kind of pay the bills. Kuat Racks is from Springfield, Missouri. And they were actually like the first person to kind of throw a little bit of budget my way. And like, I was like a little bit of like the golden child in Springfield when I was there, like at that time. So like, it was cool to like have them kind of be in my corner a little bit. And then I was able to like, Jesse Livingston, that dude I was telling you about, he worked for IMBA, who was, you know, like the title sponsor of this series. So Jesse basically had like a job with IMBA to go to all these races. So we took the Kuat Sprinter van to all these different races, and they had paid for like lodging and gas and all that. So I basically just loaded up on this program that these guys were on and just went to all these races like that way, because there would have been no other way for me to do it. Like it's insane. Like even now, like racing mountain bikes is
Nearly
so
impossible.
expensive, dude.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. So that was kind of like the first bit of support I saw, really. And I did that whole season with no sponsors. Like it's so crazy to me, like thinking
That's
about
impressive.
how like bad I was at everything at that point, and like how hard I was sending it, like from my perspective now, because like even bike setup and just tire choice. And
Were
like,
you still on that Rocky Mountain too?
no, so I got a that bike shop in Springfield. Like I was able to sell the Rocky Mountain and basically buy like a new Pivot,
Okay.
which was like a 27.5 bike. I'm pretty sure it had like,
Life-changing.
yeah, it was crazy. And yeah, it's funny now because like it had like 1 80 rotor on the front, 160 in the back. And just to think about like the stuff I was riding with the brakes that I had and the rotors that I had, I was like, I don't even know how that was possible. Like I just wasn't braking basically. Like I was not. And then, like that year. So like I got pretty good at racing in, like the Midwest and in Missouri and Arkansas, but like racing there is enduro there is kind of a lot about like being able to pedal really hard, like you're not on these sustained descents like you are out here or in the West or in just bigger mountains. So like the learning curve of like, okay, like this isn't about like how hard you're trying necessarily. This is about how fast you're riding this trail. Cause like the limiting factor in Missouri and Arkansas was how hard you could pedal. And then all of a sudden you get in the mountains and it's how like basically how well you can slow down and go around corners. Like, so like that learning curve was crazy. Just trying to like learn how to like get up to speed with these dudes who've been doing it their whole lives and stuff, But yeah, that season was a trip on just like a stock
shoestring budget,
stock bike. Yeah. And so I won that like series once it was all said and done. And I didn't really I got like second, I think, at the O-Rock race. And then I maybe got on the podium at North American Enduro Cup that year. I think, I was winning after the first day there. That was a crazy thing because I was like in these big mountains and just kind of having fun and doing my thing. And all of a sudden I was like leading this race going into the second day and it just blew apart because like we rode, one of the stages was like properly steep. And to that point in my life, I had never ridden something that steep. And like, again, all of a sudden I'm just racing
Crazy.
this. So like I like blew my lead there, but I won that series basically on like these really consistent results. Like I was in the top 5 a ton, but I never really won any of the other races.
Tomac style, man.
Yeah, dude. Yeah. Shout out. So that whole series was just so eye-opening and insane. And after the like that IMBA series was done, I was kind of looking at some more races to do. And there was the Whistler EWS was going on that year. So towards the end of this like season, I drove out to Whistler and did an EWS race, like in the pro
Without
class.
riding Whistler before then?
I'd never been to Whistler.
Jeez, dude.
And I was on this bike with like 160 rotors.
What?
It was so clapped, dude.
Oh my
and I did the race. I got like almost dead last. On the first stage, I like dropped into Ride Don't Slide, which still is such a gnarly trail.
Crazy.
Like, and still when I race in Whistler, like it is the most physical place. And like the guys who are good there, like it just blows my mind how fast they're going basically. But I remember like it was at the end of this long season, my body's beat up, my bike's beat up, and I'm like, I'm going to do an EWS race. And I entered this race and absolutely wad myself on Ride Don't Slide and like just have to like limp through the rest of this, like
Did your bike survive Whistler?
My bike survived. I barely survived.
Yeah.
I think I got like 200th. Like I think I was literally like 200th in the world at this like high level thing, which is kind of sick. But like still, it was just like
humbling moment
dude,
too.
Yeah, I was like
you
what?
gained so much experience just riding that type of terrain that year. That now is just in your bank. You know?
Absolutely. And like going back there, and like that's another place too where like the perspective continues to change on because like Whistler is amazing. I don't know. Everyone in the mountain bike world knows it.
It's like the Woodward of mountain biking.
Exactly. Yeah, totally. And like I love going back there. It's so sick. But that race in particular, like I was just like, I could never do this. Like I just absolutely wrecked myself. I was so broke. I was like, just like probably running on credit cards at that point, like waiting to sell this bike that I had like absolutely clapped
Were
out.
you still in the Kuwait van at this point?
No,
or did you like have to get back in your personal
I had
vehicle?
to get back in my truck and like drive up to Whistler. And I was like sleeping in the back of my truck at the Whistler, like in the parking lot at Whistler. It was ridiculous. It was pretty raw, but super grateful for the experience. And
so you did that first season with no sponsors. And if we flash forward to today, you have some pretty incredible names that you're repping. So how quickly and how naturally did those partnerships come to you?
Yeah, that was interesting because it was like, okay, like I want to do this. And it's like, how the hell do you pay for this? Like, cause even if I was working a job, like pretty much full time, like that would eat up like most.
You can't train, like you can't
like
ride.
it was like such an uphill battle. So that was definitely interesting thing to navigate. 2017, like I had like a really sick season. I think I got third at nationals too, which was like a good result. And like, it was just, it was a good year for me. And it was like, for me, like from that point, I started just kind of talking to companies and like people I had met throughout that year, and kind of understanding what the mountain bike industry is and how it works and can you get paid? Like, how do you do this? And at that time, Fuji bikes were like making a pretty solid push. They had an engineer that's like a rad mountain biker. He lives in Portland. He's a cool dude. I still talk to him. And he was like kind of the brainchild behind these bikes. And they had some kind of nice bikes. And basically I got put on like a factory program with Fuji,
Whoa.
which was crazy. And so that was like my second year racing. I was on Fuji, which was a learning experience as well. Like everyone I worked with there was sick, but like I was breaking pretty much every bike they would give me. Like I was on a 140 travel 27.5 bike pretty much the whole season with them,
Jeez.
which was the wrong bike.
Yeah.
Like that's when like the long travel 29ers were becoming a thing. So like everyone I'm racing is on these like 160, 170 travel 29ers.
And you're just so underbiked.
And I'm on this like heavy aluminum bike that I keep breaking. But anyway, I got sponsored by them, and that came with like a little bit of budget and a little bit of this. And I was still able to kind of do the installation thing, you know, here and there. And at that point, like with my degree, I was able to kind of, instead of working in the field, I was able to kind of come in and be like, look at the actual business and work with my dad to kind of like scale that and grow that. And so my job, you know, became a lot less physically demanding there. And I was able to do a lot more, you know, just like on a computer and help grow the business and improve the business without just being in the field, like blowing myself out on a job site every day. So that played like a huge part. I couldn't have done the racing I was doing without that, because I was able to, you know, fully focus on that for a couple months, save up some money, and then go race and then come back to it. And yeah, that was kind of like, even with this like factory deal, like it's still not like, that doesn't mean you're getting a ton of money.
You weren't
like,
getting rich off
Yeah.
of factory.
no, yeah. It just basically was like, here's a bike, here's all the components you need, and here's like 10 grand to
Yeah.
like, you know, pay for something that costs 60 or
Yeah.
more, you know? So it was like pretty challenging to figure all that out. But yeah, 2018, I had the year with Fuji, and it was sick. We worked on like a bunch of projects, and I really like helped them kind of continue to develop that bike as I just broke stuff, and I learned a ton. And I kind of, at that point was when I was learning that like the model in BMX was becoming something like really popular in mountain biking. Like at that time, really it wasn't. So like in BMX, you're kind of like a content athlete, you know, like that's the model. Like there are a few people who are just doing contests, but even them, like you're putting out video parts, you're like shooting photos with photographers. When I rode BMX, I like, there was a videographer in town that like we would work on projects for like months at a time. So like I kind of developed this skill set to like create content on the BMX bike. And that first year with Fuji, I was realizing that like, oh, that's easier to leverage for support and for budget than like my kind of whatever race results at the time, you know? So I kind of learned to start doing that with them and got pretty good at it and put out some like cool mountain bike videos. And then in 2019, I started riding for Specialized, which was like a dream. Cause like, you know, 2 years earlier, I was just sitting on my couch, like BMX kid, watching Curtis Keene do all this stuff. And now all of a sudden I'm riding for that brand.
For
and
the
it was
biggest
like,
mountain bike
crazy.
Yeah,
brand,
it was-
or one
it
of the
was-
biggest.
yeah, totally. Like they're a huge brand. So, and yeah, that was like a major dream come true to just like be in that world and like have a company like that kind of like believe in me, you know? And then, yeah, over the past 6 years since I've been riding for him, we've done so much cool stuff. It's been rad.
So sick. So I'm curious with like the partnerships too, like for you, are you going out and seeking these partnerships, or are you letting them develop organically? Because I feel like you've already always kind of been like a natural marketer of yourself. Like you've always been pretty good at that. You've always been outspoken. So are you just kind of saying like, hey, I have this network of people, I'm kind of just reaching out here and there and letting it organically build? Or are you like aggressively saying like, hey, let's make this work?
Probably a little bit of both, but definitely a lot of me like sending people emails and asking to get on phone calls and like just hustling. Cause like I was in the sport for a year and a half, 2 years at this point. Like no one knows who I am really. So like there was a lot of like me just kind of believing in what I could do and like trying to go out and find that support for sure. And like now I feel like more of the brand relationships, like they work the best when they are organic and it's like people you know, or like people you just kind of have the same like value set or whatever is the brand, or like the same aesthetic and stuff like that. But definitely a mix of both. And like there was no shortage of like sending emails off that never get responded to, or like, you know, following up with a bike brand that's never going to reach out, you know. And it was just kind of like persistence and like my will to like want to do this thing, you know, like it was just, yeah, I think putting my head down and saying like, this is my only option. This is what I want to do, and finding the outlets to make it happen.
And there must have been a bit of a tie-in with the marketing and sales background where you know that companies don't just want to like pay you to ride a bike. They want to pay you to sell bikes.
Totally.
So there's some of that. How did you kind of bring that up in those emails or those conversations where it's not just like, oh, I just want to ride your bike. It's here's how I'm going to help you, you know, with your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the marketing degree kind of, I guess, cemented the idea that like these relationships are based on something other than just like, oh, you want to be sponsored? Like, cool, nice. You know, like you're providing value to a brand who's hopefully going to sell a bike because of whatever money or product or whatever they gave you. So that was, I think, at the forefront of my mind, like from the very beginning. And I think that's a thing a lot of people get wrong is like, oh, I want to be a sponsored athlete. And like, that just means I'm really good at what I do. Like maybe, but you also have to like hustle and like be able to provide value to these companies. So just talking to them like through that lens from the get-go, you know, and like understanding like that there is an exchange of value and this isn't just this fairy tale world where you get to like do whatever you want, I think was super helpful, you know, because like I had some skill on the bike and the ability to create some content, and like I was just able to kind of use that tool set to work with brands to kind of support my dream of racing, really.
Yeah, I like that. It's a super mature outlook as well to like look at it that way, to say like, how can I provide value to help you make money with your business? Obviously, like you got some of the behind the curtain look getting your degree, but do you think also like helping your dad run his business like gave you that look of like, hey, I'm looking at these numbers. This is what it looks like to like make money.
Yeah.
And I can now like transition that into the bike world as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, in like the installation business, I've done so much. So just kind of having a general understanding of like, how does this work? Like, what does like income look like? Where's it coming from? How are we getting it? What is our marketing plan? Like, what are we trying to do there? You know, and just having that insight of like, this all is a means to an end, which is selling a bike or a bike part or whatever, like in some way, shape or form at the forefront of like my mind, I think was super helpful. And just being able to talk to people at companies in a language that wasn't just like, hey, give me free stuff. You know, it was like, hey, like put me to work, you know, like I want to like take your objectives as a company and use my skill set as a rider to like move all that forward.
Yeah. How can I elevate what you're already trying to do?
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's a really great way to look at it, because when I talk to most people who are kind of on that trajectory looking to get sponsored, that's where they often get it wrong, is they are like, I'm sick, give me stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, the company doesn't need you. You need the company in most cases.
Yeah.
Until you can flip the script around like you've done and say like, hey, I've got all this value.
Yeah.
Now
totally.
you need me.
Yeah.
And I think that in turn that creates long-term partnerships like the one that you've had with Specialized. That's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. It was, the Specialized thing's crazy. It's still like, I'm not riding for them this year, I guess. So it's still kind of fresh and I'm wrapping my head around what that looks like still. And I'm super excited for like what's next, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. We just got to do so much. And like, as I started racing enduro, my interest in other forms of cycling started to grow as well. And Specialized was like a huge enabler for me to be able to like pursue those interests. And like over the past 5 or 6 years, my like, I guess kind of wide interest space in cycling, like from, you know, gravel races all the way to enduro races, which are kind of the polar opposite, was like fueled by this company that made all those things, you know? And I got to like learn about all those things and do all those things like over the last 5 or 6 years, because I was working with a brand that made everything from like a gravel bike to a downhill bike at a high level, you know?
For sure.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's cool to be able to like widen the tool shed a little bit and be like, cool, I want to play with that bike. Even if, you know, they're not giving you one, like you can just cruise over because they have had an experience center in Boulder.
Dude.
So you can just be like, hey, I'm going to come pick up a trials bike today and play around on that.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Yeah, like shortly after I had moved here, maybe like 2018, 2019, like the gravel thing was kind of happening a little bit, like not to today's scale, you know, I'm kind of over it because it's like crazy and like it's like road racing now a lot.
It's got like a mass appeal, which is great. Like back in like 2018, 2019, it was like your first experience with enduro where it was like pretty fringe
Yeah.
still.
Yeah. And so like when I was getting into like enduro and stuff back in Springfield, like the scene there of cyclists were like gravel cyclists. Cause like Mid-South was like the state next door and Unbound is like the state next door. So like when I was racing enduro back in like 2016, 2017 in Missouri, all these people that I was meeting at the bike shops were like going and doing like Mid-South, like this 100-mile gravel race. I'm like, oh, what's that? Like, that seems kind of fun. So like, yeah, that relationship with Specialized, I was able to like get them to just send me a demo gravel bike so I could go do one of those races and like explore what that whole world's
That's
like,
cool.
you know?
What
Yeah.
was your first step outside of the enduro world then to go do a outside race? Was it XC? Was it gravel?
I think so that in 2016, like when I first got started, there's a 50-mile XC race in Missouri called BT Epic. It's still one of my like favorite races to go do. It's on my calendar this year. And I did that on my enduro bike. And it was a 50-mile XC race.
Oh my god!
And I got like a top
Jeez,
10
dude.
there
Oh
again.
my
And so I was like,
gosh.
whoa, gears are turning. This is kind of fun. So yeah, I did that 50-mile like XC race. And that was like pretty eye-opening too, because compared to enduro, like racing next to people, covering that much ground, like it was such a
Yeah.
different experience. So I think really early on in like my whole journey with this stuff, like I got pretty stoked on both the road side and like gravel side of things, because I had like a pretty solid group of friends in Missouri that rode road bikes, and they're all way better than me. So it was like so fun for me to just like go out there and try and like hang onto their wheel basically and like learn what's going on. So yeah, like my, I guess, spreading into the different disciplines of cycling from enduro happened pretty much immediately. And like over the years, they've just kind of increased in intensity
Yeah.
alongside my enduro racing.
I love that, just like most things that we've talked about so far in this podcast, that seems like it happened quite organically as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think at the time it probably didn't feel very organic because I was like, how the hell am I going to buy a road bike, you know? But then like a homie gives me one or like sells me one for a great deal. And then all of a sudden I'm on a road bike, you know? Like, I think if you're interested in something and you want to pursue it, like you can just take the steps to do that. Like there's always going to be a barrier, but like if you want to go do something, like just try it, you know, like dive in, see what it's like go for it.
That's
you know?
something I've always appreciated about your mentality. Like even since you were that 14-year-old kid at Sandstone Skate Park, it was always just the just do it kind of thing. Like,
yeah, for sure.
hey, let's go ride this skate park. Can we just go do that right now? And I was like, yeah, I guess so. Why not? Like that's a great way. It's a great philosophy to live life by, because there's no, you might not get tomorrow. So do it today, man.
Yeah,
Like, that's
man.
pretty cool.
So yeah, like the interest in the other forms of cycling have just kind of always been there. But yeah, as my, I guess, career has progressed over the past like I guess it's been 7 years now since like 2017 of racing, like I have kind of dipped into other disciplines at different levels like that whole time.
Do you have a discipline that you've dipped your toe into that you felt the most intoxicated by, that you've feel more pulled to than others?
I mean, at the moment, it's really like that kind of XC stuff, like going out and spending like, 4 hours kind of thrashing yourself like on amazing trails is a really cool experience. And like bringing like the just whole mindset of like showing up to a race and like preparing and, putting yourself in this position to like have that experience, and like the course is closed and everything, like that to me is kind of still what I'm pretty excited about and has always been like really interesting to me. And like just going for like enduro kind of opened the door to me to like this whole endurance side of like sport and life, and since then I've just been going deeper and deeper and deeper into that and like exploring that both just like mentally and physically for myself, whether it's like a race or just like a huge ride or whatever it might be.
Which sect of that do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy the mental side of it or the physical side of it? Like, or is it kind of just like an equal battle for you?
I think it's they kind of go with each other, like during those races, you have these just kind of like almost like outer body experiences where you're like, your legs are pumping, like you've prepared really well, like you're feeling good on the bike, you're hauling ass on the trails, like you're going fast and you're pushing yourself harder than you ever have just to like try and stay with this dude who's in front of you, who's been doing it for way too long or whatever, and like just like the places you go both physically and mentally, like at the same time in those experiences, I think is the most attractive and thing that like kind of keeps me coming back, you know, and like having these, like clearing the space to have those experiences is really exciting to me still. Yeah.
That's super cool. Do you ever feel like in those moments you've had these like life altering, like perspective changing moments, like kind of euphoria, like being out of the body, like getting done with the race and you're just like, whoa, everything's kind of different?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I don't know, just giving yourself the opportunity to like push yourself to your limit is a pretty crazy thing. And it's kind of like addicting, you know, like you kind of feel yourself pushing up against that limit and like trying to like keep it together so you don't blow up. And like, yeah, you have these moments during those experiences that are like just straight euphoria. It's like what everyone's kind of like chasing out of most of the things they are doing, you know, like where you're just totally in this flow state and your brain is not really doing anything other than just reacting to and like being totally present in that moment. And like, yeah, that kind of flow state feeling, I think, is something that becomes increasingly more fleeting. Like it's harder to get. Like I remember when I first got on the mountain bike, like that was what I enjoyed about it so much. It was like as soon as my tires hit the dirt and I was on a trail, I was just immersed in this experience where you just like lose sense of self and you're just like totally in that moment and doing that thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And that feeling, I think it gets harder and harder to get, you know, like as you do something more and more and more. And like when I have it now, like during some huge race or just on an enduro track or whatever, it's like that much more gratifying because it's so much harder to like get to it, you know?
That's super cool.
It was fun to listen to because
Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah,
and
dude.
so-
It's like
oh
you
my
can't
God.
explain it.
Yeah.
And it's just like a feel. Like anytime you're like good at something or you're just enjoying yourself and you're just totally immersed,
Yeah.
like, and your brain isn't
Everything just feels natural.
and,
right?
and that can happen in like tennis or like
Yeah.
pickleball or whatever, like whatever your
Yeah, it
thing
doesn't-
is. That
doesn't matter for sure.
But it gives
like,
me chills, dude.
Yeah. It's
it's a
crazy.
special feeling, dude.
Yeah, and like for me, the bike in all of its different forms has always been the biggest vehicle for that, and is like, you know, the thing that I'm kind of seeking the most, whether I realize it or not.
Yeah.
Truly a joy machine, man.
Yeah,
I
dude.
love that.
Whenever you talk about you riding XC, it makes me think of Bjorn Riley and like the clips of him in the like World Cup XC
Yeah, dude.
races, because like that combination of having the speed and endurance behind you, but also the technical bike control skill is such a deadly combo.
Yeah.
And it's such a fun combo to watch because you can just be out there dominating, but you're just like messing around on your bike.
Yeah,
And, oh man, it's
Yeah,
so
it's pretty
cool.
lethal, man. When you look at like the field and like put all those things together, it's lethal. Like
Yeah.
you can dominate.
yeah. Bjorn's a man. He's a Boulder kid.
Dude,
he's out.
so cool.
He's out like crushing it right now on the World Cup circuit.
And then he
It's-
pulls up to Boulder Skate Park and is just rolling around
Doing,
all
like,
steezy
yeah.
like.
Yeah.
And he's like, what
Yeah.
the heck, dude?
Oh
Bjorn's
my
a G
God.
for sure. Love that kid.
He's cool.
Yeah, it's been sick. I remember I was in like Tucson like a couple years ago doing like a little training situation, and he was there just hanging out, and he was like kind of on this like cusp of like, do I want to be this like racer dude? And I'm like, bro, like go
Yeah,
do it.
go
You have
do
a
it.
contract to go to Europe and just spend your like time racing, and you're
Yeah.
like you're 17, 18 at this time. Like go, dude. Like it's gonna be so sick. And it's like over the last 2 years,
It's paying off.
he's
It's
like
really paying off.
ripping, dude. And he's
It
he's
was
a G.
cool. Not to go on this tangent too much, but he was part of Simba, that group that I was affiliated with when I was a kid, and so I knew him when he was tiny. And then I kind of just didn't, our paths didn't cross for a while. And then when I was in college, I was at Boulder Skate Park, and he was there, and he comes up to me and he's like, "Are you Chase Willie?" And I was like, "Yeah, man." And I like barely recognized him, and then we started like riding together and hanging out. And then I looked him up on Instagram, and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
dude.
You're doing it,
You know
man.
what you're doing."
Yeah,
dude.
it's sick.
It was
man.
cool.
He's a G.
So talking about like these big endurance races, one of the coolest or biggest ones or most notable, I guess I should say, is Leadville 100.
Yeah.
And that's one that you prepared heavily for over the last couple of years and did really well at, right?
Yeah. Had a pretty solid result there. Yeah. So like kind of like everyone during the pandemic, I got to have a lot more time to ride my bike. And at that point, like I was really focused on the enduro thing, like since I got into it all the way until like the pandemic. And then it was like, oh wait, like there's nowhere to go. Like there's no races to do. And I was kind of like, I was going to Mid-South that year and was like kind of getting interested in it. And once, you know, like the whole shutdown thing happened, it was like, whoa, like I can actually like do this huge volume and like go on these crazy rides. And I was actually in Missouri at the time with like a gravel bike. And they're like the road riding and gravel riding in Missouri and Arkansas are some of my favorite in the world. Like it's just this endless kind of rolling terrain and your average speed's really high the whole time. So like it's a very visceral experience.
That's
like
cool.
you're kind of ripping. So yeah, like in 2020, I was able to kind of get pretty fit, like just by doing more volume in a way that I had never really experienced before. And that like was coinciding with like the popularity of gravel and these endurance events. It was before the Lifetime Grand Prix, but like all those events were already there and they were like, you know, established events. And I was just interested in like, again, like what's this like? Like, can I push myself in this way? And like, what does that look like? And how's that going to shake out? So yeah, 2020, like without a bunch of racing, I was able to just spend a ton of time on the bike, get a lot more fit. Like I've been working with the same coach since like 2018 too. So he was able to kind of load me up with stuff that is different than what I was doing in the past. And I really got to explore like the endurance side of riding in 2020. And then in 2021, I kind of committed to a similar schedule that I have this year, which is like a split of enduro races and endurance races, whether it's like XC or gravel or whatever. And in 2021, Leadville was like the biggest race on my calendar that year. So from 2020 into 2021, I kind of kept training that way. I had a few enduro races at the beginning of the year, and they were some of my best results I've had at enduro races, like top fives at BME and like the North American Enduro Cup. In the year, I was like training for all this XC stuff.
Wow, that's
so
crazy.
yeah, so that was kind of like a light bulb moment of like, oh, whoa, if you get better at this, you could get better at that kind of thing. And yeah, like I did like Cactus Cup and I did all these events kind of leading up to Leadville. And then I gave myself like a pretty big chunk of time to go up and train like at higher elevation.
You were there for like a month, right?
Yeah, I was there for like a full month. Rafa had a pop-up in Aspen and there was like some housing for the employees there. And I kind of like slid into that position and was working part-time at this Rafa pop-up in Aspen. And, you know, like at elevation and was able to basically spend like a full, 3 weeks at Aspen training at elevation, which was crazy. Cause like maybe a week or so after I got there, I did the Silver Rush 50. And I won it, which was crazy also. Like that's like my only like big XC result I've ever had. But like, I just remember doing that race, looking at my power numbers and looking at my heart rate and being like, what the hell is going on with my body right now? Like power was way low. Heart rate was lower. It was weird. Like my body, like there wasn't enough oxygen in Leadville, like at 10,000 feet for my body to like go. Like it was such a crazy experience. Cause like you're pretty in tune with like what your effort level looks like on the bike, like what your heart rate should be, what your power should be, like, et cetera, et cetera. And like, yeah, getting there like just a week into like this kind of altitude camp I was doing and then racing and just feeling like I had this like limit on what my body could do. And then over the next month, like continuing to train and adapt and get used to that altitude. And then eventually I did the Leadville stage race leading up to it too. Like I was kind of just going all in on this and it was so fun and so exciting for me because it was just so different from everything I'd done on the mountain bike at that point. And I did the Leadville stage race, which is the whole Leadville course over 3 days. And I got second at that. And I was like, oh, whoa, like this is like, I'm building an engine.
This
here.
is
like,
materializing.
This is working. Yeah. And so that like, I had some friends that like live up in Leadville and I was able to stay for them for like the final like 2 or 3 weeks coming into the race and like, just like live up there, which is a cool experience, like not a lot, like a lot of people get to visit Leadville, but spending like more than like a week at a time there, it's like, and being in town when, like the crazy race madness isn't going on and just like, it's so chill and there's so much access to riding. And that was really fun. And then, did the Leadville 100, that Silver Rush result kind of got me into like the corral. I was actually had a front row call up for the Leadville 100, which was weird. Cause I'm like looking at like Keegan Swenson and like all these other gnarly endurance dudes.
They're like, who is this guy?
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, whoops. Like,
you're back in your cutoff jorts and the BMX
I should have
helmet.
been, dude. No, I was like full nerded out for that one for sure. But yeah, the Leadville 100 was crazy. And like, I had done all this preparation, but there's just nothing that can prepare you for like what the actual race is. Cause like you're at 10,000 feet, it's 100 miles. I think you climb like 13,000 feet or like 11,000 feet, something like that in there. And And yeah, that race was a crazy experience for sure. Like hit some walls, like learned a lot. And yeah, that event was really cool to be a part of. And just like, yeah, ended up at the end of it getting like a top 20 result, which is crazy. Like
That's
I think I was like
insane.
literally 20th, but yeah, I still get to say I got a top 20 at Leadville.
Yeah.
Which was sick. And I also learned that like maybe those events aren't my jam because there isn't a ton of like bike control differentiating going on in that race. Like it's basically like a gnarly gravel race slash
who
road
has
race.
the power.
Yeah, it's literally a power contest. But like still like I was able, I think still I hold like a bunch of like Strava like KOMs or close on my hardtail with a rigid post, like on
That's
all
sick.
these like
Nice.
Leadville downhill sections. And like when I race XC, it's really funny because like most people in like the part of the race that I'm at are very strong and they might not be the best at bike control, you know? So like I've always had to play this game of like hang on the climbs, put a ton of time into people on the descents, and then like make up the difference like
Yeah.
everywhere I can.
So
I'm
much
like,
cat and mouse.
yeah, dude.
That
Like
was
I'm,
my XC experience too.
yeah, and it still is my XC experience, but I'm finally getting strong enough now that I can like kind of hang, which is sick. So yeah, this year I'm going to do some more kind of XC racing that I hope is a bit more technical, and like my bike control and, you know, the endurance side of things will be able to kind of shine through.
Yeah. I mean, XC and gravel too, like those disciplines of cycling are tough if you haven't been doing those basically your whole life.
Yeah.
Because the people you are competing with, like in that top 20 at Leadville, they've been doing that since you were riding BMX.
Totally.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And
so like that's like the differentiating factor
100%.
there.
And it's been cool, like over the years, like kind of since, you know, I got into enduro racing, like I've slowly been building like this endurance engine. And like today, like that's kind of what I'm like this off season at least has been what I'm really focused on. Cause the last 2 years I've been a lot more enduro heavy. I just kind of saw a bit of like my interest closing there and I wanted to like double down on it and see what it was like. And I kind of didn't enjoy it that much. So yeah, I'm kind of getting back to like the all-arounder athlete that I've been in the past, and we'll still be at enduro races and focus on some XC stuff too, which really I'm super excited for this year. Like,
Have you picked up the BMX bike recently then too?
man, I've been riding my dirt jumper a bunch.
Yeah.
Valmont, like we've been going there since 20
Dude, since it opened.
since
really.
it opened. You know, it's
Yeah.
been like, you know, 12 years of going to Valmont, but like this recent regime of dirt jumps and like the crew that they have there is like,
Dude,
it
unreal.
blows my mind. And I ride the BMX bike every once in a while, but like I'm way cozier on the dirt jumper
Yeah,
and I
makes
kind of have
sense.
more fun on it. But yeah, and like just getting through like the XL set at Valmont now is like
It's a chore, man.
dude, it's crazy. The jumps are huge. And like the line's like kind of technical and they're like proper jumps. And yeah, I just like in the summer, I am there every evening I can where I'm not like too blown out from whatever else I did that day. Like I still love, you know, cruising around a skate park, or like I went to New York with my fiance and her family and one of my best friends, Grant, who you know really well. And I brought my BMX bike there and we rode street, you know, like,
sick.
and this is in like October, you know? So like the BMX bike is always going to have a like a hook in the garage to hang on for sure. Like it's never going anywhere. And it's crazy too, because like I still have the same BMX bike I did in like 2016 or whatever, when I was still kind of like serious about it. And it is still relevant. Like it still works.
I think that's so hilarious
Dude,
about
it's
BMX.
so refreshing to like hop on that and like just air up the tires and just ride and not have to
Yeah.
worry about all these bips and bobs
Yeah.
and stuff. Like,
Especially because like mountain bike technology does progress so fast. So like
Yeah.
your bike from last season is already out of
Oh,
date,
dude, yeah.
because you know the technology's changed 10 times in a year.
absolutely. Yeah. Like on the mountain bike side, it's such a competitive, like your equipment matters so much. And BMX, like it didn't really matter. Like
Yeah.
everyone has like the same like steel frame and whatever, you know, like you could do little stuff to your setup, but like, yeah, if you don't have the right bike in any kind of mountain bike racing, you're just like, it's such a disadvantage. Like you can't win unless you have like the exact build, the exact tire casing, the right inserts, the right tire pressure.
And if it's not set up correctly
Dude,
for you,
yeah,
you know, like, because
exactly.
again, that's another thing with BMX. Like you can kind of ride, like you could probably take your BMX bike off the wall, not check the tire pressure, and like go ride it
Yeah.
decently.
Yeah.
You can't do that with a mountain bike.
No, dude. Yeah, it's so complicated. That was one of the biggest learning curves for me. It was just learning how to like keep my shit together on the bike, you know, and not like, because in BMX, I was breaking stuff on the BMX bike, which is kind of hard to do. And then I got a mountain bike and everything's made of plastic and you can over tighten bolts real easy. Like the bike shops that were
All
dealing
the
with
torque
me.
specs,
Yeah.
they're like, dude, chill out.
Yeah. They were like, you got to stop tightening this. I was like breaking carbon bars with just trying to get my brake levers where I wanted them. It's like, oh, this is hectic.
That's hilarious. I want to jump back and touch on Rafa. You said that you went up and stayed with them during Leadville time.
Yeah.
That's a partnership of yours that has been around for a number of years. How long have you been working with them?
Yeah, I think I like signed with Rafa in 2021.
Okay.
They up until that point didn't have mountain bike gear. So in 2021 is when they launched their mountain bike line. And funny enough, like whenever I moved out to Colorado, my dad lived in Milliken at the time, which is like, if you guys know where that is. It's just, it's way too far away from the mountains. Like it's not chill. It's like,
it's northeast of where we sit, like 45 minutes.
It's ridiculous.
Out there.
So like, I was like, I got to get closer to these hills, dude. Like if I'm going to live here, I can't be out here. So I like went on a Rafa group ride, like just at the clubhouse, like they have a clubhouse here in Boulder. So it was a brand like that I admired a lot, and like the stuff they were doing on the road, I was super aware of and like super keen on.
And kind of like a hometown brand for you now, right? Like because they have roots now in it. Yeah.
Yeah, the Waltons bought them. I'm pretty sure. They didn't buy like.
They just invested.
They invested in them, and like they moved like the North American headquarters to Bentonville.
Yeah.
So yeah, which is another cool thing because like Bentonville played a pretty big role in like the beginning of my mountain bike career because all the trails that were being built there kind of coincided with me getting on the mountain bike. So I would go down there like pretty much every weekend to like see what new trail was there and try it all out. But yeah, the Rafa thing is another like kind of dream come true scenario. Like I went on a group ride, met some people that were like the ride leaders, and I ended up renting a room from them for like the first 2 or 3 years that I lived here, and they were super rad. And so like I was kind of just like around the clubhouse, so I would like go in there and get coffee and whatever. And I started to kind of like meet people there and kind of started hearing these murmurs of like, oh, they're going to do a mountain bike thing. They're going to like make a mountain bike brand, like blah, blah, blah. And so I kind of just like got in at the ground level there, like kind of asked the people in Boulder, like who's responsible for this? Like who's in charge of that? And like there are these 2 dudes that kind of helped start the Rafa mountain bike brand that were super rad and kind of believed in me. And I was able to just kind of start a narrative with them back in like 2021 when things were started and really like have a voice in like product development and like the products that like the mountain bike clothes that Rafa makes are the best mountain bike clothes I've ever worn. Like unabashedly, even if I didn't ride for him, I would have to like say that because it's just the truth. Like the kind of the early conversations I had like with the guy running the brand there, like I remember telling him things that like I was very passionate about, like how like a knee pad fits or like how I wanted the cut on a pant or whatever it might be. And then all of a sudden, like a year or 2 later, the product line comes out and I'm like wearing like my dream gear that is made like that almost exactly. Like they like took the kind of like thoughts I had and developed them further. And like, it's just so insane to me that they came to market with the product that they did like first try. Like,
yeah, because usually people miss the mark pretty bad.
Yeah, like I was riding for another kind of road brand that was making mountain bike stuff also. And it was just like, you could tell it was like a road brand making mountain bike stuff. And the Rafa stuff was like so mind-blowing how good it was. Just like right out of the box, like better than anything else on the market, like objectively speaking. Like, and people who've worn it can like attest to this. It's not just like me tooting their horn, but yeah, so I got kind of in on the ground level with them and just kind of continued to like grow with them over the last several years. And that's been a really cool partnership and one that I'm most excited about, like moving forward to. Like they're on board for 2024 and however else long, and I'm excited to kind of lean into that one more and work on projects and, explore there.
That was some pretty good company that kind of signed alongside you with that initial hit to the mountain bike market. What was kind of the crew of athletes that were built around that?
At Rafa?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's this Jake and Nate are the 2 guys that kind of started all that. And Nate has been around in the industry forever. And so he had like this like deep, just kind of Rolodex of people he's known, and he really handpicked like kind of a group of people that I look up to the most in the sport. And like Miranda Miller was on it from the get-go, Elliot Jackson, Bryn and Jill Kittner were on it, Adam Craig, Joey Schusler, who's a local dude here in like Gold Hill, and yeah, it was just so exciting for me to be a part of like the mountain bike part of Rafa at the beginning and still to this day, because like they kind of just took all my heroes and put them in the kit, you know?
Dude,
and
that's
like,
a crazy crew of
Yeah,
people to
yeah.
sign.
And
like,
also like lifers in that industry.
Yeah.
And then
absolutely.
also being you getting to be like on that roster.
Yeah.
Pretty new in the industry. Like that's special.
Yeah, man. It was cool. It was like a really cool, like kind of convergence of like the people I knew and like the place I wanted to be and wanted to go. And yeah, all kind of came together pretty good, and it's been a good fit. And like their product's still incredible, and they're continuing to like push that forward. And yeah, stoked.
Good
on
for you,
everything.
dude.
Thanks.
So
That's
cool.
really cool.
And beyond you just getting to like be an ambassador for the brand, you're also getting to like cruise around in the Rafa van and like
Yeah.
pull shots of espresso
Yeah,
for people.
yeah. That's been a crazy kind of development in the whole program. So like, I mean, the dilemma of like, how do I do this and how do I pay for it and how do I keep, you know, the lights on has been going on. But like I've said, like I want these brands to put me to work, and Rafa has had this kind of long history of building out these like vans or buses or whatever they are that are like just they call them mobile clubhouses, and they're just like a mobile spot where you can just like hang out, have coffee, you know, interact with the brand, but more so just like be a community around bikes and like have this vehicle basically that's just a tool to kind of like elevate that whole experience. So yeah, the last 2 seasons I've been in the Rafa mobile clubhouse, like their mountain bike sprinter, and it's got a La Marzocco like GS3 that slides out of the back of it.
Wow.
Oh,
And
that's
like
so gangster.
it's like a full like coffee shop setup. Like the build on it is so insane. Like it's wild. There's this dude Tim who's like kind of been involved in the Rafa brand like since they came over to the US, and he was like the dude in charge of building it, and he had done a bunch of them in the past. So like it's just the most
Just, like,
ridiculous
to the
van
nines,
build
dude.
I've ever seen. Yeah, and it's so sick. Like it's got full like water filtration system in
Wow.
it, and it's literally a mobile like coffee shop. So I've been taking that to my races over the past 2 years, and like it's a tricky thing to balance when you're racing, obviously, but like there's downtime too. So like in the pits, you know, like at an EWS race, like rocking up with like a nice espresso machine, like everyone who rides mountain bikes is a coffee nerd, you know? So immediately everyone's just hanging out. Like I got the speaker on with the music. It's like I'm just in that coffee shop I was in.
That's what I was going to ask.
You know,
Yeah,
like
it's just like,
it's
well,
the
it's
same
cool to
vibe.
like cross. Oops.
You're good.
It's cool to like recross those passions,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And say like, hey, I got really good at this thing, and now I get to reactivate on coffee
Yeah.
alongside of my other passion, which is riding bikes.
No, it's been like such a sick, you know, opportunity, and just like such a fun thing to explore, and just to like rock up to a mountain bike race and be pulling shots of espresso that are like dialed, you know, like
better
it's
than
just,
you can get at
that's
most
crazy.
cafes.
Yeah, and like a lot of the times we're racing, like we're at some, you know, like a couple years ago we were at like Sugarloaf and Burke on the East Coast, and like they're these like kind of like podunk towns like out in the middle of nowhere on the East Coast with these big mountains in them. So like there's no good coffee around, and everyone in the mountain bike world now, it seems like, is just like a coffee nerd, you know?
Mhm.
So you just whip out this espresso machine and get everyone stoked. It's like the craziest experience to just hang out and like drink really nice coffee in this like literally at the base of a mountain that you're about to race on like all weekend.
That's badass.
Yeah, dude.
I want to go back to racing just for that.
Yeah,
bro.
straight up.
Yeah.
Heck yeah. So I'm curious, you know, talking about all like this multidisciplinary cycling, like what do you believe are the key ingredients for you to maintain like motivation and resilience and a growth mindset in the face of all the challenges and setbacks that come along with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's like continuing to just pull on those strings of like the things that get me excited. Like, to be honest, enduro racing, like for me, is kind of a little bit over it, like in a way. Like there are parts of it I still really enjoy, but like the scene in the US is like the experience of going to like a big race is not really something I'm interested in anymore. Like, and I did only that last year. It was like that double down, and I was kind of like unhappy doing it, and my results got worse, and like I was a little unmotivated. And for me, it's just really like putting goals and things on the schedule that I'm really excited about, you know, and like that's kind of a moving target, you know, it's always changing. But like this year, like that feeling of being super fit and riding a bike that I had back in 2021 and like the beginning of 2022 when I was doing the endurance stuff is something I miss so much. Like to be able to go out and ride hard for 5 hours, like takes training, and like you have to like really build a body and like the endurance to be able to go out and like do that and enjoy it the whole time, you know? And like for me, like that feeling and like those bigger days on the bike and the things that are like more adventurous where like you're not just at a ski resort like doing bike park laps over and over again. You're like in some random part of the country you've never been to, and you're going on a 4-hour ride to like ride these 3 stages that you're gonna, you know, race like the next day. Like those are the experiences that I'm more interested in. And like the XC races that are, you know, all on single track and are like, you know, 30 to 50 miles of like just ripping like the whole day. Like that right now is what's getting me really excited, is like just the experience itself. And I feel like from a competitive aspect, when I'm just excited to be there and excited for that race and excited just for the experience I'm going to get at that race, like the results come so easy in those kind of circumstances. So that's kind of like where my focus is right now, is like on the kind of more technical XC race side and the more adventurous enduros where you're not like parked up at a bike park for, you know, a week at a time. You're just, you go to some venue and you're exploring like an area on your bike, not on a chairlift. Like I love laps at the bike park, but like I just can't do that all year long. You know, like it's just not what I'm interested in.
Do you think that that's something that's changing for you with age as you're like getting closer to turning 30, or is it just something fun and new?
I think like the risk aspect of enduro racing is increasing, and is something that like I don't necessarily want to like follow, you know, because like from the time I stopped riding BMX, like there was a part of it that like just kind of the high risk to reward situations. Like I still enjoy those, but like when that's the only thing you're doing all the time, like I got burnt out on it, you know, and I want to push myself in a different way than just like sending it like through this section.
Spiking the cortisol levels all the way up.
Yeah. So like for me, yeah, I think I kind of saw my window of being really excited about like enduro racing kind of closing. So I kind of went all in on that like the last couple of years. And yeah, I'm just super interested in like kind of pursuing the things that are more of a physical challenge. You're in more unique places, you're covering more ground, and yeah, just kind of new events, new places. Like it's so much more exciting to me than like showing up to the same venues every year and kind of just going through the same motions, you know?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Is that a conversation that you've kind of had to bring up with your brand partnerships and the sponsors?
Yeah. I'm lucky that I've been atypical enough like the whole time in this like enduro and mountain bike world that like the people who I'm working with are kind of like stoked on what I'm stoked on, you know, cool. And they like see that as, you know, where they want to put their focus too. But definitely like, I think, you know, part of like moving on from Specialized was like, I kind of got siphoned into a part of that company that was like very just focused on enduro racing.
Gotcha.
And that was great and was good for the last couple of years, but like that's not necessarily where I want my focus to be anymore. You know, like I kind of want to have this like wider net. So yeah, I think it's definitely like a conversation I have to have with the brands I work with, but I think a lot of the brands are just stoked on like who I am and what I'm doing and what gets me most excited. And that is kind of just like this wide net variety of, you know, disciplines and riding styles.
Cool. I think a good point to touch on there is like, not only are you, you know, trying to deliver results for these brands, but you're also delivering quality content as well.
Yeah.
And that seems like it's been a huge focus for you over your career. Like, where did that outlook come from? Was that just, like you said earlier, seeing BMX riders being those content creators and you're like, okay, I can incorporate this here? Or where did that come from?
Again, like I learned how to leverage my ability to create content to support my racing pretty early on. And I'm still doing that. Like there are much better bike racers than me, but like I'm able to put out like an edit on a weekend of bike racing that no one else is doing, you know, with the help of like videographers and friends that are doing that with me. But like I can kind of differentiate as an athlete on my ability to both like go to the event, race, and come out of it with something that looks cool and makes other people want to go do it. Cause like ultimately like all of this, like I hope is just inspiring people to like go try this stuff, you know?
Which in turns helps sell bikes, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How are you identifying partners to help you create that content?
Like from just like videographers or the companies I'm working with,
the
or
videographers or the photographers that are going out with you.
yeah. I mean, it's just relationships, you know, like I have a handful of friends. Like we're really lucky in Boulder. Like we're kind of in the center of this world in a lot of ways. So like the freaking Gold Hill Film Union that's pumping stuff out, like those are some of the best filmmakers in the country, and they're just posted up like right here, you know. So like having access to those guys and kind of like all of the other people, you know, like the rooted dudes, you know, like Kason Shimon,
They're killing
he's
it.
a homie, he's a good filmer. Like I love working with him. Wiley Kalpis is like the dark lord of video effects and all things sick. Like he's a legend. I love him. Like I got to do a sick video project with him last year. So it's really like my friends. And then this last year, we kind of focused on doing a bunch of like these more shorter form reels at a lot of the events I was going to, kind of for Rafa and my buddy Colin Seigers, who's like just a homie back from Arkansas, who's gotten into the video game and like it's just honestly like has this amazing amount of raw talent with it. Like we got the opportunity this last year to kind of make some really fun stuff, and like that's the kind of stuff I like doing the most, is like when it's me and one other homie and we're like really run and gun and we're still putting out stuff that's like really high production value and is really true to like what is actually happening. Because like a lot of times when you're filming, it pretty much ruins the experience of whatever you're doing,
Yeah.
you know. But then like if you're with your friends who ride with you and like understand like where you're at and that you're just kind of sessioning stuff, it becomes like a much more natural thing, and like the product at the end of it is way more inspiring to me than just like, you know, we got this commercial shoot with like 15 people and we have this crazy camera set up and
we don't know any of these people that are here.
Yeah. And like, you know, this day is going to cost somebody, whoever's paying for it, like 30 grand. And we're going to get like 3 clips that I think suck, you know, but like I can go out with a homie in the woods and some good light on some trails that I love and bang out like some of the sicker riding footage that I've put out, you know? So like basically filming with my homies and the people that I like to hang out with is kind of my dream scenario.
I love that you touch on that, because my favorite projects that I've ever watched in the mountain bike world or just the cycling world in general, you can always tell the ones where it's like the rider is working with homies.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the perfect example of that is somebody like a Brendan Semenuk,
Yeah,
where he's like, his films are so perfect all the time because he's just going out with his homies. Like he's not going out with some random crew. Like these guys know him. They know his mentality. They know how he's going to do tricks. Like, and the byproduct of that is something that is magic. So
yeah, I mean, he's kind of like the goat of putting out a mountain bike edit, I would say. But like, yeah, I listened to like a podcast with him recently that was pretty sick, just to kind of get a little insight into what that dude's thinking about on a daily basis. But yeah, like I think he's kind of the pinnacle of what we're talking about. Like he has this tight crew of like friends, whether it's the builders or the filmers or the photographers that kind of are on the program, and they're like just out there like doing it themselves. You know, they're like, there's not some crazy production company that Red Bull hired to like do this. It's him and his homies that have like perfected this kind of craft, you know? And yeah, it speaks volumes in the footage.
Yeah, they built their own ecosystem, which is so beautiful,
Yeah.
man. And it like feeds itself at the end of the day.
Totally.
I'm also curious if this is like where your love of cameras came from, because you're a photographer yourself.
Yeah,
so.
man. Yeah, I guess that's another thing that's kind of coincided with all of this. Kind of back in Springfield, there are a lot of like Christian hipsters, I would say, cripsters. So it was kind of like popular culture there. And with that came film cameras. And so I kind of got sucked into that vortex. But yeah, I had like a Pentax K1000 that I just started bringing with me on trips, and that kind of taught me the fundamentals of photography, and like kind of got some of my favorite shots I've ever taken are on that thing still to this day, you know. And that kind of just grew, you know, throughout the years. And now I love shooting photos. Like I try to get out like pretty often and shoot photos of other people, and I love shooting photos of my bikes and making them look like amazing to me, you know. And like that is something that's been so natural and has always coincided with everything else I'm doing, you know, like being in these incredible places and seeing all these incredible things. Like, of course, I want to do it justice and take a good photo of it. And yeah, that's something that has been like a common thread throughout all of this, is shooting photos for sure. And then like being on shoots with really good photographers, like similar to riding with a really good rider, like you're seeing what these people are doing. Like it's no longer black magic. Like you're watching them hit the shutter, like, you know, what's going on. Like, and so, yeah, just having access to that has been really cool. And I want to start shooting more video stuff too, but I don't know. It's just a bit of a learning curve
Yeah,
that I haven't
it's such a
tackled yet.
crazy, like different world, same device, such a different world.
Yeah, like I think it would be really cool for me to like focus on some like self-filmed edits where I can just really like, you know, go to left hand and like
you guys should talk.
I know, I've seen your stuff, dude. Like,
thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. That's something I would want to get into at some point for sure, is like actually shooting videos of myself, because I love shooting photos, but obviously it's pretty hard to shoot a photo of yourself riding a bike.
Yeah.
So yeah, photography is something that I really enjoy and continue to like aspire to grow in for sure.
Heck yeah. And a lot of your photography is featured on your like alter ego Instagram, which is Slightly Pitted.
Oh
correct?
Yeah, Slightly Pitted, dude.
Heck
That's the one.
So you had some branding done from that a couple years ago,
Yeah,
which is all very beautiful. Do you ever like intend to turn that into a brand in itself, or is it just like a fun little side project for now?
It's a little bit of both. Like I totally do. Like I think as I kind of progress through my career as a mountain biker, like the model of like, look at me, like I'm this athlete, I'm doing all this stuff, is like a little tired to me. Like I don't know, like I want to shift the focus away from me and more of like what's actually happening and what we're doing. And I definitely see Slightly Pitted in some rendition being kind of like the evolution of what I'm doing for sure. Like I'll probably change the name a little bit. It's a little juvenile at this point, but yeah, maybe a little branding refresh at some point too. Russell Wadlin, who's this like BMX dude from Tulsa, he's the one who did all that branding like back in the day. So that's another like little BMX connect. But yeah, it's a fun little thing, and kind of like my alter ego on the internet that I feel like is a little bit more true to who I actually am than like my other Instagram account where all the like athlete stuff's happening, you know? So yeah, that will definitely, I think, be kind of the evolution of what I do in this space in some way, shape, or form, with like a little facelift and a rebrand. And I'm not quite sure how that'll materialize, but just kind of like maybe like a crew vibe situation where we're just like putting this like what we enjoy and what we want to do like out into the
community
world.
oriented.
Yeah. And like, you know, obviously like I'm not going to stop riding my bike and like filming it and, you know, hanging out with friends, but just shift that focus away from like the super like, you know, like individual version of like being a selfish athlete that is glorified today. Like, I don't know, the older I get, like the lamer that is to me for some reason. And yeah, I definitely see Slightly Pitted to be the evolution of that for sure.
I'm stoked to see what it progresses and turns into, because if it's like anything else you've done so far, I'm assuming that progression will be very organic and true to what you aim to aspire to be.
Yeah,
so,
for sure, man.
Yeah, I can't wait to see that.
We'll see where that one goes for sure.
Heck yeah. So as we've talked about, like, you know, you jumping from BMX to enduro to endurance and being a photographer and a coffee lord and all these different things in this mix, man. I'm curious, like, how you balance between like pushing your limits physically and mentally, and like if there's any strategies or practices that you incorporate to maintain like a sustainable approach to those activities.
I think I'm learning how to do that now, actually. I think in the past it's been pretty like just chaotic and just like whatever opportunity is in front of me or whatever I can do or whatever I think I want to try, like I'm just going to do it and like figure it out, like just jump in kind of thing. And really, like over the last several years as an athlete, what I've been trying to do is clear the runway for me to focus on being an athlete. Like I've said this several times, like I've leveraged content to like, you know, fund my racing career, but I want to just race my bike. Like that's kind of my goal, is just to be a racer, you know, like I'm sure I will always have these other creative outlets, but like that's what to me is like the most interesting. So over the last couple of years, like with the increase in support and everything, has kind of cleared the runway for me to just be able to like be a lot more focused on the training and the process of getting better, instead of just showing up to these events and like kind of wondering what's going to happen at the next one. It's more of like I'm doing much more intentional training and like drills on the mountain bike or whatever it might be to get better at that. And I treat that as like my day job, you know, like I work with a coach and he loads in, you know, about 20 hours a week of stuff for me to do, whether it's on the bike, like intervals, a run, gym work. Like, so that's 20 hours a week of moving time that I have, you know, and I treat that like my job. And when you factor in like the laundry and the food and all the other stuff and like taking care of your bike, like that's 40 hours a week. Like if you're riding 20 hours a week, it's 40 hours a week of work to like make it to where you can do that. So over the last couple of years, I've like been able to clear the runway for myself to actually focus on that stuff. And that's kind of been like a huge breakthrough for me, is just being able to be in a position like financially and support wise to where I can just focus on the stuff that makes me better, and approach that like a job, like not in like a traditional sense. Like I still have tons of autonomy over my time and like how I do it all, but just kind of like wake up and get after it until it's time to relax and rest for the next day, and like implement some kind of structure in your life, and get into a routine. Like when I'm home and I'm training is when I'm the happiest, because like my focus pretty much every day is like to go out and push myself on my bike. And that is the thing I enjoy doing most, So like, I guess finding the work that you want to do and clearing the runway for yourself to just be able to do it is kind of the one thing I could say about that.
That's beautiful. So that was going to be my next question. It's like how you're refilling your cup while you're doing all this crazy stuff, but you basically just answered it by saying like, you're having a lot of fun doing it, and it's, continuing to motivate the progression. Yeah. It's
just like so mind blowing for me to like wake up and like my main priority that day is like a set of intervals, like that's like that's my dream come true, is to be the person that like just gets to do that work, so yeah, it's pretty easy for me to just like tick those boxes and kind of keep putting one foot in front of the other. Like the motivation is a little endless for me. Like, of course there's days where I go out and the weather sucks or whatever, but by the time I get home and I like got through it, like I feel so much better because of it,
Certainly. So you just touched on like getting to clear the plate, and like, the only reason that that's possible is with all the support that you've received over the last couple of years. Earlier in this episode, you mentioned that your partnership with Specialized has come to an end as of the beginning of this year. What's next for you?
Yeah. So for 2024, I'm going to be riding for Yeti, which I haven't told anyone. So I bet by the time this podcast comes out, other people will know. But yeah, I am so pumped on that relationship and that brand as a whole. And yeah, their history in mountain biking is kind of endless. Like I would just watch this video the other day of like Tomac's weird dropper mountain bike and like, or drop bar mountain bike. Yeah. And in that
video is sick,
dude. Yeah. Okay. So in that footage, he's on the Purgatory World Cup track, which I raced last year. And
no way.
And there is a section of that track that's the same. And he was doing it on that drop bar mountain bike. And that section of track still on like a 170 travel enduro bike is like insane. And that was like, I don't know what year that was, but like
I think it was early 90s.
Yeah, it was kind of at the beginning of like this whole world that we're like steeped in now. But like, yeah, Yeti was there and they had him on this bike that was so different and like so much lighter. And they just have this like kind of super core connection to the mountain biking world that I respect so much. And like the partnerships obviously is like just starting, and there's so many people at the brand that like I look up to. Like I've been around Richie Rude for the past like however many years, and like there's not a better example of like just a solid person who loves riding their bike and is an absolute savage and just crushes whatever's in front of him. And like just being around people like that, and like Josh, the dude I'm working with, who's like become a friend of mine, and Joey, like he's become a pretty good friend of mine, and he's been on Yeti like his whole life, it seems like. So yeah, there's so much to come there that I'm so excited for. And like Specialized is a huge company, and like over the last couple of years they've been kind of in a weird spot marketing wise, and it's left me with pretty idle hands like when it comes to my bike sponsor, which is traditionally like the company you're doing the most with. And like to move to a company that's like just down the street in Golden, and I like know all these people at, and they have like their whole engineering department there and everything's going on like right there down the street, is just so exciting for me, because like what we'll be able to do together will just expand so much, and they've got like some new bikes coming out that are really in line with like the goals that I have this year. So that's super exciting, and yeah, man, I'm kind of over the moon on that one for sure.
Yeah, that's dope, especially because you have like so many teammates that are right here in the area.
Yeah.
Between like Joey, you said you've got Sean.
Yeah, dude, Sean is an absolute homie. And
Nate Hills.
Yeah,
like, dude.
Nate. Yeah, it's kind of endless. It was like, in hindsight, like me riding for Yeti was kind of, something that's been in the making for several years now. Cause like I've gotten a little closer to the crew, and like Damien, like the race team manager, like I've seen him at the races forever, and just like respect like the level of professionalism and like what they bring like presence wise to a race, and how they treat athletes. And yeah, I'm so excited. And like Kabush rides for Yeti, and like he's a fucking legend, and like I'm going to be doing some XC stuff this year. So I'm sure like we'll probably cross paths and some of that wisdom and knowledge is going to rub off on me. But yeah, that one is like, I don't have a ton to say about it yet because it's all kind of just starting. But yeah, I'm over the moon and like cannot wait to just race those bikes and get like dig the heels in a little bit on that relationship and see where we can take it.
I'm excited to see where it progresses to,
Yeah,
especially like the fact again that you're in Colorado, and you know, it seems like Colorado has been one of those places for you that has been so iconic throughout your life, and you ending up here and then with a Colorado brand is going to be something that's really special. And again, being able to go down, you know, 20 miles down the road and go hang out with the crew and just like talk about ideas and then realize those ideas is going to turn into something that I believe will be really special.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I don't know, it feels like pretty limitless at this point, but we'll see where it goes. I'm just really stoked. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm stoked for you, man.
Thanks,
congratulations.
dude. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Heck yeah. So as we kind of like near the end of this episode, I'm curious over your career so far, like what has been the most standout memorable experience for you?
Oh man.
If you can pinpoint one, maybe it's a couple, but if you can pinpoint that one, I'd love to hear it.
Dude, it's so hard. I mean, winning that first series, like the overall was like so surreal. Cause like, I was like, I want to do this. And like, that was like literally the best case scenario. So that feeling of like, winning a race like, or like winning a series like that, it lasted a whole year, was pretty freaking memorable. But like now, like I feel like the things that stick out to me the most right now are like, I went on a bike packing trip for the first time in September, and that experience was insane. And it was like that next kind of level of like pushing this whole interest into like endurance and cycling into like another, you know, area. Cause like previously to this trip, it was like, you can go on a huge bike ride and it lasts all day. And like, that's super fun, you know, but then it's like, you can go on a huge bike ride that lasts 5 days in a row. And that's all you're doing for 5 days. So like, just like the state of mind you're in, like, again, it's kind of like going to a race where you clear the space and you prepare and you plan and you like have your route and you have your food and all this stuff dialed in to just like have these like crazy experiences on a bike, you know, and like any time where I'm in uncharted territory is kind of what feels like the most memorable thing to me, like every time it happens, you know. And most recently that was this like 500-mile bike packing trip I did with the homies.
That. Where was that?
So it was with my buddy Brandon, who's like done a pretty good bit of like, he's done the Colorado Trail a few times. He's done some like something like Kyrgyzstan, like Silk Road mountain race or something. So he's like kind of steeped in this world a little bit. And so he was like my sensei. And he put together this route that basically goes from Boulder, from our house, to Colorado Springs. And then we went from Colorado Springs to Breckenridge, and then from Breckenridge back to Boulder. Nice. And then obviously like there's a ton of stuff in between all that. So yeah, it was like 450 miles, 45,000 feet of climbing, and we did it in like 4 days.
Wow.
So yeah, that was a wild experience. Cause like the first day of that trip was like, we were basically halfway through the ride, and it was the longest ride I'd ever done. And we were like halfway through the ride, you know, like we were 8 hours
day one.
into this, like, and I was just like, whoa, this is like, it just took all those like kind of limits I like had placed on like myself, like just unknowingly, and like my body, and just blew them to shreds of like, oh my God, like you can literally just do this forever as long as you keep eating, which was, super cool experience. And then to like, just go through like this state and see it in that way. Like I've driven to Colorado Springs. It sucks. It's a horrible drive. Riding there was incredible. I saw all this stuff that I've never seen. Like you're connecting all these crazy dots. And then like, I've been to Breckenridge a bunch, but to ride from like Colorado Springs to like this little town of Hartzell and then climb over the back of the pass that drops into Breckenridge was like the craziest perspective altering experience. Like, you know, just like seeing this state that I felt like I was very familiar with from all these different like perspectives and point of views, and covering that ground in like a way more intimate manner than just like sitting in a car was like
fully new perspective.
Yeah, it was such a wild experience for sure.
That's the thing that I love about it, is it's seeing so much terrain at like the perfect speed. Yeah. Because it's faster than just like walking or running, so you can see a bunch of stuff, but it's slower than driving. Totally. So you could really be immersed in it.
Yeah, you still have like the sensation of like flying through space and time also like thrown into that, and then everything that's around you, especially in Colorado, it's just like so amazing.
Just awe-inspiring,
Yeah,
man.
totally.
Especially that route. Like there's so much.
Dude, it was crazy.
That also is one of those crazy things to me because you understand how close everything is respectively.
Yeah.
Like when you
yeah,
go over
totally.
those passes and
Yeah.
stuff, you're like, wait a second, like this takes me how long to drive here?
Yeah.
But if I just punch up over this pass,
It takes 30
it's-
minutes.
Yeah,
It's
that's crazy
Yeah.
to me. Like
that part of it was pretty mind blowing because like there's a little town. I forget what the name of the pass is in Breckenridge. Like most people will probably know what I'm talking about, but there's a road that goes up it and then it drops back into this little mining town. And like I'm kind of confused. Like I'm like, I don't know where we're at right now. And I'm just following this route. And then all of a sudden, like I'm on this climb and we peak out on the top of this pass. And you're like, you can see down into the town and into Breckenridge. And I'm like, oh, whoa, I've been here.
Yeah.
And I just got here on my bike via like 250 miles of riding. Like how, like this is wild.
it's so crazy. Yeah. When you start linking those passes and seeing like as the crow flies, like where things land, you're like, oh, this is a pretty easy state to get around on a bike. That's really cool.
Yeah.
We need to go on a bike packing trip this year.
I'm
Sign me
so
up.
down. I want to do the Colorado Trail really bad.
Same.
I'm not very interested in bike pack racing because I love sleeping. I think that is a lovely thing. And bike pack racing like seems like this contest of who can sleep the least and keep riding their bike. Which
Yeah, that sounds kind of miserable.
to me is just, I don't know, like maybe one day I'll get that masochistic with it. But yeah, the experience of covering ground like that and just going on a bike ride that lasts days, is just so wild and like is really exciting to me and like different enough from the other competitive stuff that I'm doing, but still is like applying my skill set that like that's a like kind of a frontier that I'm dipping my toes into and pretty excited about.
Maybe we start looking at 2025 for a Colorado Trail bike packing trip. Because we've talked about that.
I might do it this year, dude. I might, if I can find the time in August, take like, just block out 10 days or something and just give it a go and see what it's like and
That'd be
enjoy it
sick.
and like sleep in a hotel one night and eat
Yeah.
a lot of burgers on the way and like, yeah.
That's sweet.
Finish in Durango at SCA for a couple pints.
Yeah, there
Oh,
you go.
Were you on gravel bikes or XC bike for this?
We're on gravel bikes.
Nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's something that because I've never bike packed with an XC bike
Mhm.
before. All of mine has been on the gravel
Yeah.
bike.
I mean, I had like huge tires on and we were riding stuff that was pretty technical
Yeah,
a lot of the time.
right.
So like gravel bikes nowadays are kind of like XC bikes
Mhm.
of the past.
Yeah.
So it felt, and yeah, gravel bikes are really cool in that way because they are so versatile and you can cover so much ground like you're on a road bike, but then you get into like some chunky stuff and you can totally like handle it, which is pretty fun. But yeah, I haven't done it yet on the XC bike and I'm very excited to just like get deep into some wilderness and like just be alone and like out there, like you kind of can't do that in any other way and cover that much ground.
Yeah, and that's part of the fun thing about bike packing. Like half of the fun for me is the route planning.
Yeah.
And just like staring at a map and being like, I think I want to go from here to here.
Yeah.
And then you do it in real life and you like, especially here in Colorado, there's so much history that you could ride through. Like there's just all these abandoned, ghost towns and mining towns and everything.
Yeah.
And you're just like, wow, I've lived here my whole life and there's so much that I ride by and I'm like, I didn't even know that this existed here.
And then like over the years, just like traveling and driving on I-70 and like kind of filling out the mental like map of what's actually going
Seeing
on.
what's behind the peak that
all
you're
those
driving
different
next
peaks,
to.
I mean, we're so lucky to live here. Like there's just so much to see and experience. And yeah, like again, what I'm looking for out of racing is like these longer days where I'm out there and like riding new trail and experiencing these new places and pushing myself. Like it's the same kind of thread, like it's just a different like application, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lot more personal to me. Like when I got out of racing and started picking up the gravel bike, I realized that like the thing that I really enjoyed about time on the bike is the very personal gratification and not like the results that I was chasing.
Yeah.
And I started finding more of that in, here's a route that I just made for myself that has something very personal to me. And now like, I don't need to worry about comparing myself to anybody. I'm worried about comparing myself to myself and like seeing this journey through to really discover who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And I try to like bring that mentality into racing because like if the only reason you race is to get good results, like you're going to have a horrible time because like, even if you're one of the better dudes, like you're going to have bad races and like if that's the only thing you're looking for, like, I mean, it's kind of the cliche thing of like enjoy the process or whatever, but it's cliche because it's true, you know, like, so yeah, that's definitely like a mindset I try to bring to everything I'm doing, whether it's bike packing or a enduro race.
And that's probably why that in conjunction with the fact that you're kind of chasing what is interesting you in at the moment, at the time.
Yeah.
Is probably why you're kind of safe from burnout right now, because everything is very internal, you know. When you're just comparing yourself to yourself and not people outside of you, you know, you are fully in control of how you're feeling about it.
Totally. Yeah.
And it's so introspective that way too, right?
Yeah.
Like you get to learn a lot about who you are and like what you're actually made of when you're out there, like challenging yourself in all these different aspects.
Yeah.
Like that's a very special place to put yourself in, that I think, again, going back to the name of the podcast, a lot of people put themselves in that normal box so they don't really have to figure out who they are. And well, you don't have a freaking choice when you're out there hammering your brains out, you know?
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. And like, it's top of mind because I just listened to your guys' podcast with Anton. He's G, and it's an inspiration to me. He's doing crazy stuff in New Mexico right now.
Yeah.
Yes,
watching
he
him
is.
do that is wild. But yeah, he kind of like put it in like the frame of like, you get to these points where you kind of have to like make this decision of like, I'm going to continue trying and I'm going to continue going and I'm going to continue pushing myself. And it's those like brief moments of like maybe a little bit of doubt of like, can I do this? And then the decision to do it and to keep going is like, yeah, I mean, like I'm just stealing his words, but like that's the same kind of thread we're pulling at here.
Well, I love that you just touched also on like the fact that like falling in love with the process and how cliche that may be in most people's eyes, but like the reality is like that's all you have in all of this.
Yeah,
because
totally.
the results are fleeting, you know, the high points are fleeting, but like what is forever is the process. And what gets you to those places is the process. And I don't think many people are looking at the process as the beautiful piece. They're looking at those results. And like you said, once you falter and you don't get those results and you're not in love with that process, that's when it all comes unraveling.
Yeah. And I've been there and it sucks, you know, like you have to like really enjoy how you're spending your time and what you're doing, regardless of kind of the outcome a lot of times, you know, like I think that's a really strong way to just go about living your life, you know?
Yeah. Again, going back to the fact that a bicycle is a joy machine, it's also a wonderful lesson teacher. Like you learn so much from the bicycle and also spending days out there.
Again, it might be cliche, but there's so many comparisons between the experience of riding a bike and your professional experiences too. Because we were talking about this the other day with somebody, that all your work is just problem solving. You know, all marketing is problem solving. All business ownership and entrepreneurship is problem solving. But same with riding a bike. Like something goes wrong at a race, all you got to do is problem solve.
Totally.
You're in 300 miles into a 500 mile adventure and you're starting to like bonk, or your legs are catching up to you. That's problem solving.
Absolutely.
And it's usually the success comes on the other side of that problem. If you can really just adapt to it and think like, okay, I'm going to be fine. You know, I just need to take these necessary steps to get over this tough point. Mm-hmm. Once you do, it's just like it's that euphoria feeling.
Totally.
That gets addictive, dude.
Yeah. And that problem solving is like a muscle too. And like you work on that muscle and you make that muscle stronger in so many areas of your life. And totally, like you're saying, it's applicable to everything, whether it's like breaking a spoke or breaking a chain or whatever it might be on a bike packing trip or during a race, or like figuring out how you're going to be valuable to a brand next year so you can keep doing this stuff, you know, like it's all similar muscle.
It's all relative, really, you know,
totally.
like, I mean, it even just spills over into everyday life. It's like, how are you going to pay rent next month? Okay, I'm going to figure that out. And like, it is all relative. And it's cool that all these skills, you know, in our experience are pretty much all derived from a bicycle. I think that's pretty special.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Again, the skills come from trusting the process, I guess is what I'm trying to circle back to here, which is pretty special. So man, I love this right here. This is getting deep right here. That's cool, man. I appreciate that. Well, as we wrap this up, man, is there anybody you'd love to give a shout out to that's helped you along the way? I know there's a long list of names.
There's a lot. Yeah. First of all, my fiance, Annabelle, she puts up with me every day, which I cannot be easy. So I love her and thank you for that. And our dog Myrtle, who has my heart. She's lovely. I almost brought her to this podcast, but would have spent more time talking about her than any other bike stuff. So that's probably good. My boy Grant, dude, like just the day ones. Like,
Oh yeah.
My freaking parents, like they don't even understand what I'm doing, but they love me and they encourage me to keep doing it, you know, and just anyone who's played a part in like my journey, I am eternally grateful for. Like, I don't take any of this stuff for granted, you know, like I'm not the kid who was on like a development program when I was 12 years old. Like I was an adult and I decided to race mountain bikes and I'm getting to like enjoy all this. And there's so many people like over the years who've played a part in all those stepping stones. And yeah, there's too many names to list, but yeah.
Hell yeah, man. Well, where can people keep up with you and the journey that you're on, man?
Yeah. Instagram, I guess, is the main place. It's _Jimmy is the handle. My name's Jimmy Smith, which is like the most common name ever. So
Yeah, don't try and Google this guy. You
Yeah.
will find the most wild.
there's crazy stuff going on.
Is
But
it actually the most common name ever? I'm pretty sure it might be.
I think James Smith is the most common name in the United States. Yeah, Instagram is kind of the spot. That's where I put everything that I care about. I try to do a good job of, you know, wrapping it up tightly and throwing it on the internet. I'm a bit lost in that space at the moment. It's kind of crazy just how much it's changed. But yeah, good photos, good writing stuff. Everything I've got going on kind of gets put there for sure.
Well, last but not least, can you leave us with some parting motivating words for anybody looking to pursue a similar lifestyle to what you have led?
Man, I think like people say if you find what you love, like you'll never work a day in your life. And I think that's just bullshit. Like I think it's the total opposite. Like if you don't want to work a day in your life, like find a really boring job that pays you pretty well and just hang out and do your thing. But like find what you love and work your ass off, because that's all you can do, you know? And like if it doesn't lead you to what you thought it would, it's going to lead you to the thing that's next or whatever, you know? So just like be really intentional and passionate about like what you do care about and how you do want to spend your time, and then just build a life around those things, you know, and just do whatever it takes to make it happen. There's no magic spell or secret sauce. It's just like passion and work, you know?
Absolutely, man. That was beautifully said. Thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you for this episode. This was a really special one.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
glad we finally got to get it done. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what the rest of your career looks like. That's going to be really fun to watch it unfold over the next couple of decades, man, because I think you've got a long time of bicycle riding ahead of you.
Yeah,
so.
me too. I'm excited, dude.
Really fun getting to talk to you and get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah,
I'm
for sure,
looking
dude.
forward to riding with you more in the future.
Yeah,
And
dude.
yeah, let's get out on some XC rides, some bike packing rides, and even some left-hand laps.
Yeah,
Pretty
dude.
sweet.
I love it all. So yeah, thank you guys so much. This is like first podcast I've really done besides one little Leadville race recap. So it was a fun experience.
Heck yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. And thank you guys for listening. If you guys are enjoying these episodes on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And if you're listening to them on Spotify, Apple, or Amazon, please leave us a review. It greatly helps get the word out and allows us to keep this project rolling. Thank you so much for being here, for being a part of the Traction family. We'll catch you on the next one. Keep being scared of normal. That's a wrap. Jimbo Slice. We're out. Yeah. Yes, dude.
Yeah.